Besides, Brooklyn looked like she'd lost all hope. She didn't struggle, simply letting herself sink into the sea, the waves pulling her down into the depths. He had to save her. Vivien was surrounded by bodyguards. She would be fine. But Brooke was different. And even if he wanted to save Vivien, in what capacity could he? The frigid seawater surged around him. Ignoring the wounds on his own body, Jason plunged in after them. As Vivien watched with hopeful eyes, he swam right past her, stroking powerfully toward Brooke, who was already disappearing into the dark water. The deep blue sea blurred his vision. The last rays of the setting sun vanished below the horizon, and visibility dropped to near zero. But his focus was absolute. The hope on Vivien's face froze. The icy water seemed to seep into her very soul, a cold that was bone deep. She couldn't believe it. Jason. He had, without a moment's hesitation, abandoned her to save Brooklyn. He saved Brooklyn. In that single instant, all the confidence and joy Vivien had built up was washed away. She had truly thought he hadn't forgotten her. But now she felt like a clown. A numb pain, like 1,000 needles, pricked at her heart. To watch the man you love save someone else. It was a pain 10,000 times worse than any bone marrow transplant. She lost the will to live. She watched as Jason reached Brooke, wrapped a strong arm around her waist, and fought his way back toward the surface. She stopped struggling, letting the ocean claim her. Her consciousness began to fade. The last thing she thought she heard was Clara Sterling's voice. "What are you all standing there for? Get her out of the water." Clara had arrived just in time to see both Vivien and Brooke fall, and Mr. G's silhouette dive in after them. Without a second thought, she ordered her bodyguards into the water. By then, Jason had already dragged a soaking wet Brooklyn onto a nearby cluster of rocks. Brooke, wake up." Her face was pale, her body limp in his arms. His eyes were red as he patted her cheek, his voice frantic. But she remained still, like a broken doll, her eyes shut tight. Blood was seeping from the recently stitched wound on her neck. The car. We need to get to a hospital." Jason knew this was bad. He lifted Brooke into his arms and sprinted toward one of the parked cars, throwing her inside. He slammed his foot on the gas, peeling out toward the nearest hospital. Clara watched the scene unfold from a distance. A strange, uncomfortable feeling tightened in her chest as she watched Mr. G.S. retreating back. "He's that concerned about Brooklyn?" she murmured, frowning. Just then, her guards pulled a dazed Vivien from the water. Vivien wasn't unconscious, but her leg was clearly broken. For some reason, she just stared blankly ahead, as if she'd suffered a massive psychological blow. Her eyes were bloodshot, her hands trembling uncontrollably. "Are you all right?" Clara asked, her brow furrowed. Vivien didn't answer. Something felt wrong, but Clara couldn't put her finger on it. She shot a cold glance at Bianca Sterling, who was shivering in the back of another car, and sighed in frustration. "My niece is the one who screwed this up today. You go to the hospital first, I'll be right behind you." She gave Ava and the others a meaningful look. Ava nodded, helping Vivien into a car and following Jason's vehicle. Only then did Clara turn her full attention to Bianca. Her expression turned to ice. "Bianca, don't you think you've caused enough trouble?" she said coldly, opening the car door to face her emotionally shattered niece. It was them. They were hurting my brother." Bianca tried to explain, tears streaking through the grime on her face. She couldn't allow it. She wouldn't let anyone take her brother away from her. She didn't want to be the unwanted child again. She just wanted his eyes on her, his love for her alone. Anyone who hurt him or tried to steal his love had to be removed. Clara looked at her niece's incoherent rambling. Her icy gaze finally softened. "That incident with me, and now this with Brooke and Vivien, I know it's your condition, that you can't control it when it happens. But I will not allow next time." Clara's voice was low, almost placid. "I know you're in love with Jason." Before today's press conference, she had already learned about Bianca's history with Brooke and Jason at A-list university. "But he is your aunt's husband. You should never have had such thoughts." She could tolerate other things. Whatever Bianca wanted, she could give her. She was her only niece, after all. But Jason was absolutely off limits. Bianca's expression went slack. She hadn't realized. Clara had known all along. Had she been the only one living in a fool's paradise? Clara didn't look at her. Take Bianca back to the Sterling estate. Have someone watch her. She is not to leave the grounds again without permission. She sighed softly and took a step back. "I'll handle this for you. But Bianca, you need to behave." The bodyguard stepped forward, escorting and numbed Bianca away. Finally, Clara turned, her gaze landing on the still-bound Julian Sue. "Well, look at this. After all that, you've ended up in my hands again." She smiled at Julian, whose mouth was gagged. It was a terrifying smile. The moment she thought about how Jason had died because of this man, she wanted to tear him limb from limb. A pity. Jason died because of you. I should have dealt with you myself, she said, her voice a silken threat. But your blood is too filthy. It's certainly not worthy of my collection. The sight of it would disgust me. She paused, a cruel glint in her eyes. However, I do own a small private island off the coast, a marine sanctuary. I've cultivated a lovely population of small sharks. I imagine they'll find you quite appetizing. Clara's beautiful eyes stared down at him, a delicate, aristocratic smile playing on her lips that sent a chill of pure terror down Julian's spine. MMPH. MMPHH, he struggled, trying to scream. That bastard Jason, he's not dead. He's not dead. But the gags silenced his cries. Clara looked at him with disgust. So noisy. She waved a dismissive hand, a weary look on her face. The usual method. Make it clean. She rubbed her temples, glancing in the direction Jason and Vivien had gone. She eventually shook her head. Take me to the same hospital, mister. G and Vivien went to. After an incident like this, she should be there to oversee things. Besides, there was something about Mr. G's back, the way he moved. It was so familiar. She couldn't be mistaken. He looked so much like Jason. An impossible theory began to form in her mind. Meanwhile, Jason had already screeched to a halt at the entrance of a nearby hospital. Doctor, where's a doctor? We need help. He burst out of the car, carrying Brooke, and sprinted toward the emergency room doors, his frantic shouts startling the medical staff. Sir, please calm down. Let me see what's going on. A doctor quickly came over and began assessing Brooke. The moment he saw the wound on her neck and felt her ice-cold, waterlogged clothes, his expression turned grim. Now, get the trauma team down here. Now, he barked at a nurse behind him. A knot of dread tightened in Jason's stomach. He grabbed the doctor's arm. Doctor, how is she? Is it serious? It's hard to say, but the situation is critical. The neck wound appears to be from sharp object, recently stitched, but it's already showing signs of inflammation and deterioration. The fact that she was submerged in seawater makes it much worse. She's already running a high fever. We have to get her into surgery immediately. As he spoke, the doctor gestured for a gurney. They carefully transferred Brooke onto it and began wheeling her toward the operating room. Okay, doctor, please, you have to save her. Jason pleaded, following them until a nurse blocked his path at the doors. We'll do our best, the doctor said gravely. Jason was left to wait, staring at the illuminated in-surgery light, his gut twisting with anxiety. He knew it. He never should have brought Brooke to the press conference today. At that same time, Clara arrived with Vivien, but they were directed to a different wing of the hospital, away from the trauma unit, and he didn't notice them. Jason didn't see her either. His eyes were glued to the light above Brooke's operating room door. Time stretched into an eternity. His mind was a battlefield. He couldn't figure out what his feelings for Brooke really were anymore. He just knew he couldn't stand the thought of something happening to her. At the very least, she had tried to repent these last few weeks. She had apologized to him, sincerely. Jason rested his forehead in his hand, sinking into a heavy silence. Over an hour later, the doors finally swung open. A weary-looking doctor emerged. Jason shot to his feet. Doctor, how is she? She's out of immediate danger, the doctor said, pulling down his mask. But she's not out of the woods yet. We need to keep her for observation. If the infection causes the fever to spike again, her life could still be at risk. Jason's brow, which had been tightly furrowed, didn't relax. It's that serious? He murmured. The doctor's face darkened. Let me tell you something, you young people. Do you think a lacerated carotid artery is a joke? The initial wound only nicked the artery, but instead of being careful, you let her fall into the ocean. It's like you have no regard for her life at all. She's being moved to the ICU. If her condition stabilizes within 24 hours, she can be transferred to a regular room. If you're family, you should go be with her. The doctor stepped aside. Brooke was wheeled out, her face ashen, her eyes still closed. Okay, Jason said, speechless from the scolding. He followed the gurney to the ICU. Looking at Brooke, still unconscious on the bed, he felt a wave of helplessness. Great. Now he was the one taking care of her again. The family member needs to come down and handle the payment, a nurse said from the side. Right. Jason nodded and went down to the billing office on the ground floor. As he paid, he glanced outside at the darkening sky and finally remembered Vivien, who had also fallen into the sea. He'd seen Clara arrive with her people, so he figured Vivien was probably fine. After all, she didn't have any pre-existing injuries like Brooke, and her bodyguards weren't just for show. Still, he hadn't seen them at this hospital. "Excuse me," he asked a nurse at the counter. "Did two very beautiful women come in here a little while ago?" The nurse glanced at his reasonably handsome face and gave a shy smile. "Not that I've seen. We're not allowed to cross over between departments. I'm in trauma admissions. I didn't see anyone else brought in for emergency surgery. I can't speak for the other departments, though." Jason nodded, understanding. No one else in the trauma unit. That probably meant Vivien was okay. Either she didn't need to come to a hospital, or she went to a different one. Or maybe her injuries were minor, and she was in another department. As long as she wasn't in the trauma wing, that was good. The special effects wax on his face was gone, and he had no way to get more right now. If Clara didn't come here, she wouldn't discover his identity. "Thanks, miss," Jason said. He thanked the nurse and headed back upstairs to the ICU. He had no idea that on another floor, in a different wing of the hospital, Clara was already with Vivien. Inside the orthopedics operating room, Vivien lay on a table, her face a grim mask as the doctor wrapped her leg in layer after layer of plaster for the cast. She remained utterly silent. The sheer force of her presence was so intimidating that even the doctor worked without a word. He couldn't help but marvel internally. Setting a broken bone was incredibly painful, yet this young woman hadn't made a sound. Her tolerance for pain was astounding. "Miss, if it hurts, you can say something," one of the younger nurses said, her voice full of sympathy. Vivien didn't respond. She watched as the nurse took her arm, preparing to insert in 4-line. The next second, the nurse's expression shifted. "Miss, your arm. And your leg. What are these marks?" The doctor looked over. They could all see them now, the telltale scars and puncture wounds of bone marrow transplants. But there were so many. Bruises overlapped, new needle marks appearing before the old ones had even healed. No wonder she hadn't cried out in pain. The agony of a broken bone was nothing compared to that. Vivien remained placid, saying nothing. The staff didn't dare press further. Once the cast was set, they wheeled her out of the room. Clara was waiting right outside the door. As Vivien emerged, she walked over. The doctor spoke first. "Miss, her leg will be fine. It's a clean fracture. Once it heals, she'll be able to walk normally." "Good," Clara nodded, her face unreadable. "And dancing? Will that be a problem?" As much as she disliked Vivien's existence, disliked her status as Jason's unforgettable first love, she had to admit there were things about the girl she respected. She didn't want to see her career ruined by this. "Oh, don't worry, miss. Her leg will be fine. It will just take a bit longer to recover. She'll need to wait at least 2 months before she can dance again," the doctor explained. Clara breathed a small sigh of relief. She glanced at Vivien, only to see her pull her lips into a self-mocking smile. What's the point of dancing anymore? Her dance, her effort. It was all for Jason, to dance with the man she loved. Now that he didn't love her anymore, what was the point? Seeing her like this, Clara sighed. She had no idea how to offer comfort, so she simply said nothing. "Take Miss Sue to her room and see that she's well cared for," she instructed her bodyguards and the nurses before leaving. She hesitated for a moment, then turned to Ava beside her. "Mr. G and Brooklyn should be at this hospital too, right? Where are they now? Take me to them." She was confused. She needed to ask them questions face to face. She wanted to know what the relationship was between this Mr. G and Jason. After all, she hadn't forgotten that Sprite, Lucy, was Mr. G's personal assistant. There had to be a connection. She needed to get to the bottom of it. "Yes, they're in the trauma wing. I saw them when we first came in," Ava said quickly. Clara nodded, her expression grim. "Take me there." "Yes, ma'am." Back in the other wing, half an hour earlier, Jason had returned to Brooke's room after paying the bill. It was right around the time Vivien was being taken to have her leg set. When he got back to the room, a nurse was setting up a 4-drip for Brooke. Sometime while he was gone, Brooke had woken up, but she was in a fragile state, her expression listless. She was staring blankly out the window, her shattered beauty heartbreaking to see. Jason stood at the doorway, unsure what to say or how to approach her. He knew she must have found out about being a substitute. How was he supposed to explain this? Honestly, he could have handled her screaming and throwing a fit. At least then, he could try to calm her down. But this quiet despair, there was no way to appease it. "Sir, the patient's condition has stabilized, but she'll still need someone to look after her. You should come in," the nurse said, turning and spotting him. It was too late for Jason to stop her. At the sound of her voice, Brooke had already turned her head. In an instant, her vacant gaze sharpened into a crimson, ominous glare. "Jason, you dare show your face to me?" she rasped. Her bloodshot eyes, filled with a crazed resentment and a deep, wounded pain, locked onto him. "I'll take care of her. You can go," Jason said, stepping forward and taking the cup of water from the nurse. He braced himself, poured a glass of warm water, and walked over to the bed. "You got chilled. Drink some hot water to warm up," he said, avoiding her gaze as he held out the cup. Brooke's crimson eyes never left his face. When she saw the cup he offered, a wave of sour grievance and hatred washed over her. "I don't want it." Seeing him act as if nothing had happened, she slammed the cup out of his hand, her emotions boiling over. "Jason, were you lying to me from the very beginning? You never loved me, did you? Everything you did for me. It was all because of that woman, Vivien, wasn't it? Jason, what do you take me for?" she snarled, grabbing him by the throat. Her slender fingers dug into his skin, leaving red marks, as traitorous tears streamed down her face. Jason knew he couldn't hide it anymore. "I'm sorry." He looked down, unable to meet her eyes, and chose to tell the truth. "It's true. I pursued you because of Vivien." Hearing his words, Brooke's last shred of hope died. Her tear-filled eyes, glinting red, stared at him as her grip tightened. Everything she had told Vivien had been a desperate denial, a truth she refused to believe. But now, hearing it from his own lips, she wanted to rip him to shreds, kill him, and then die in his arms. But looking at his face, she couldn't bring herself to do it. All her strength dissolved into a single, pathetically desperate question. "Jason, have you ever, even for a moment, loved me?" Her voice was thick with tears as she stared at him, her face a mess of heartbreak. Still, she stubbornly needed an answer. She thought that even if he'd used her as a stand-in, he must have felt something for her. Could everything he'd done, all the risks he'd taken, truly be just for a face that was only a pale imitation of another's? Jason was at a loss for words. He didn't know how to confront this feeling. But his hesitation was all the answer Brooke needed. He hesitated. He couldn't even bring himself to lie to her. So it was all fake. All of it was fake. She suddenly threw her head back and laughed, a hollow sound against the ceiling. "Jason, you are truly something else. You lied to me, and I told you, anyone who lies to me pays a price." Her expression shifted in an instant. The gloom in her eyes transformed into a thick, murderous intent. Her hand tightened, her nails digging into his skin. Blood welled up, but her eyes saw only a crazed obsession. "Blood. Look how beautiful the color red is. If we both die here, right now, you can never leave me, can you?" She smiled, a beautiful demonic curve of her red lips. With her other hand, she caressed his cheek as if he were a precious lover. "Babe, I was actually thinking if we could just live a quiet life together, that would be nice. But you hurt me. You lied to me. And after this, were you planning to run off with that Vivien and live happily ever after? Don't worry. I will never let you leave me, even in death. You can only die by my side. Shall we die together?" "Okay." The words she whispered in his ear were like the tender murmurs between lovers. But the icy intent and killing frost that crawled up Jason's spine made every hair on his body stand on end. Meanwhile, Clara, having left Vivien's room, was already on her way. Ava led her, quickly finding out which room Brooke was in. Within moments, they were standing right outside the door. Clara frowned at the closed door, about to knock. But just as she raised her hand, she heard two familiar voices from within. One was Brooke Lynn's. The other was Jason's. Clara thought she'd misheard. Her mind went blank for a second. But then she heard it again, clear as day, Jason's voice. "Brooke, calm down." Inside, Jason's face was turning red from Brooke's grip. But he didn't fight back, instead placing his hands over hers. "Brooke, whatever you're angry about, can we talk about it after you've recovered? You're injured. You can't get this worked up. Once you're better, we can start all over, okay?" Jason knew Brooke's personality. More than that, she currently had his life in her hands. His only option was to placate her. And seeing her like this, the words he spoke weren't entirely a lie. The truth was, he didn't exactly hate Brooke. But to Clara, standing just outside the door, those words were a bomb that detonated in her mind. Start over. Start all over. The phrase echoed endlessly in her head. Clara swayed, her vision instantly tinged with red. A violent, murderous aura exploded from her. What a beautiful sentiment. Start over. What a brilliant scheme. Fake your own death to escape. So this was all just a game orchestrated by Jason. All of it to escape her, to get back to Brooke Lynn, to marry Brooke Lynn? Was that it? She knew he had once wanted to marry Brooke. But he had hurt Brooke for her sake, cured her of the cryotoxin for her sake. They had been intimate, a real husband and wife. She thought he had forgotten Brooke Lynn. But now, here he was, at Brooke's bedside, telling her they could start over. Then what was everything between them? What was the I do he'd said at their wedding? What was everything that happened when he'd helped her? All the things they'd shared. Was it all a lie? Clara's body went numb, cold, as if an invisible net had been cast over her heart. A dull ache, like an icy blade scraping against her ribs, made it hard to breathe. At the same time, a tidal wave of fury surged in her chest. She wanted to storm in there and cut them both into 1,000 pieces. If she hadn't come here today, if she hadn't shown up, would the two of them have just run away together? Clara Sterling had been brilliant her entire life, and now she'd been played for a fool by him. She was shaking with rage. She reached for the doorknob. Just then, Brooke's voice rang out again. "Start over." Hearing Jason's words, Brooke let out a derisive laugh. "Jason, do you really think you can still fool me? You don't love me at all. I knew it. That's why you've never once said you love me. And now you're talking about starting over? You're just trying to placate me, so you can find a way to get rid of me later, aren't you?" Brooke shrieked. A guilty look flickered across Jason's face. Crap, how did she suddenly get so smart? This isn't working. Seeing that flash of guilt, Brooke's suspicion instantly became certainty. "Jason, you bastard!" she screamed, struggling and grabbing a nearby glass to hurl at the wall. Jason's jaw twitched. He tried to calm her down. "Brooke, don't hurt yourself. You can throw whatever you want. Just please don't hurt yourself, okay? Then tell me, have you ever loved me?" Brooke gritted out, grabbing him again. Her eyes were wild. She'd already made up her mind. If Jason dared to say he'd never loved her, she would kill him on the spot, then kill herself. But Jason's answer caught her off guard. "Brooke, in your eyes, am I really that heartless of a person?" He went completely off script. The question stunned Brooke into silence. Something felt off. Jason pressed his advantage. "Brooke, I admit, at first I was good to you because of Vivien, but from the moment you apologized to me, our past was in the past. To be honest, I don't dislike you. In fact, I have some good feelings for you. So can we please let the past go and start over? We can go somewhere no one knows us. As long as you're willing, as long as you don't hurt yourself. Otherwise, the people who care about you will be heartbroken." He softened his tone as much as he could. The crimson glow in Brooke's eyes gradually began to fade. "But do you love me or not?" She wasn't going to be placated that easily. She wanted one answer. Jason's mouth twitched. He forced out the lie. "I love you, I love you. Can you please stop making a scene?" he said, rubbing his temples, exhausted. Brooke pouted, tear tracks still on her face, but she clung to Jason's hand. "You said you love me? Is that true? If you dare lie to me, you know the consequences," she said, her eyes narrowing with a dangerous light. A chill ran down Jason's back. "Of course it's true. Then who do you like more, me or Clara?" Brooke asked the million-dollar question. Jason was silent. "What's the official ruling from the UN on that one?" "Jason, answer me. I like you, all right? That's more like it." The sounds of their bickering floated through the crack in the door. Clara stood outside, hearing every single word. When she heard Jason say he loved Brooke, the last bit of hope in her heart died. And when she heard him say he liked Brooke more, she felt the blood in her veins reverse course, her rage solidifying into pure, murderous intent. Jason, Brooklyn, she was going to kill them. Clara was breathing heavily, her chest heaving. Ava watched her, terrified, about to say something to calm her down. Just then, she heard Jason get up and walk toward the door. "Brooke, you get some rest. I'm going out to get you something to eat. Call me if you need anything." Jason, having cleaned up the mess on the floor, turned to leave. The moment he pushed the door open, he was met with a gaze that looked like it wanted to slice him into 1,000 pieces. Clara was standing right there. Her cold, beautiful eyes were blazing with a homicidal fire. If looks could kill, he would have already been subjected to death by 1,000 cuts. Instantly, a cold dread crawled up his spine. Jason froze. "CLA? Huh, honey, when did you get here?" he managed, forcing a dry cough and a deeply awkward smile. Every hair on his body was standing on end. "Seriously? When did she show up? She didn't hear all that stuff I said to placate Brooke, did she?" A terrible premonition washed over him. He subconsciously touched his face where the disguise used to be. It was gone. Game over. This round is shot. Can I get a do-over? Black lines of panic streaked across Jason's vision. His smile was painfully strained. "Honey, you heard all that?" he asked tentatively. Clara didn't speak. She just stared at him with cold eyes. Then, her lips curled into a beautiful, mocking smile. "When did you want me to have arrived?" Jason said nothing, but he could already guess. She'd probably heard everything. "What? Cat got your tongue?" Clara's anger intensified at his silence. "Jason, if I hadn't seen this with my own eyes today, how long were you planning to deceive me? Brooklyn knew you weren't dead from the beginning, and Vivien must have found out at the coast. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been so devastated. I knew it. I knew something felt wrong. So everyone knew. Everyone except me was in on the joke, is that it? Clara let out a bitter laugh. Her cold, sharp features seemed to fracture, a starlight glint of tears appearing in her crimson eyes. If I hadn't come today, were you planning to just run away with her? Huh? In your eyes, your own child and I aren't even as important as Brooklyn, are we? Clara's voice was icy, her face stained with tears. But the murderous rage in her eyes was so potent that Jason completely missed her pain. All he felt was mortal danger, and the madness flickering in her red-rimmed eyes. Clara, you need to calm down. He'd had it. He'd just finished placating one lunatic, and now here was another. But there was no way Clara would listen to him. Answer my question. Her body was trembling violently, her eyes fixed on him. Jason, everything you ever said to me, was it all a lie from the very beginning? Do you think just because you have this Mr. G identity, I can't touch you anymore? Her red lips curved into a bloodthirsty smile. In that moment, the tears of heartbreak transformed into something terrifying. Clara, what are you trying to say? Jason grew wary, taking an instinctive step back. But it was that single step that pushed Clara over the edge. He was avoiding her. He was avoiding her. Was he that afraid of her? A moment ago, he had been so happy with Brooklyn, and now he was recoiling from her. Clara's fury ignited. Her eyes fell on the red finger marks Brooke had left on his neck. A crazed look flashed across her face. She lunged forward, opened her mouth, and bit down hard on his neck. The bite was filled with resentment, instantly drawing blood. The metallic taste filled her mouth, and, as if spurred on by the sensation, she bit down even harder. Clara, what are you doing? Are you insane? The pain was sharp and sudden. Jason shoved her away, his hand flying to his neck. It came away stained with red. This woman, is she part dog? Her bite force is like a hyena's. Pushed away, Clara's eyes flashed with hurt. Insane? In his eyes, was she always just the crazy one? Clara laughed, a bitter sound born of pure rage. She started spitting venom. Jason, I thought you understood. From the very beginning, we signed a contract. Your only responsibility was to get me pregnant. You are, and will only ever be, Clara Sterling's toy. I don't permit anyone else to touch you. What is that, Brooklyn? Who does she think she is, putting her hands on my property? I'm telling you, if I want her dead, she'll be dead. And as for you, even in death, you will only die by my side. Her long, elegant fingers clamped down on his jaw. Jason's expression changed. A toy. Clara, to you, have I always just been a toy? Since he'd entered the Sterling family, he had seen Clara's domineering nature gradually change. He had witnessed it. She was carrying his child. He had softened. The vows he'd made at their wedding weren't entirely lies. He just couldn't live under her control in that suffocating role. That was why he'd left. He'd even felt a pang of guilt for the pregnant Clara he'd left behind. But now she was telling him he had only ever been a tool. Jason's gaze turned to ice. Clara opened her mouth, wanting to explain. But when people are angry, they always say things to hurt each other. She was no exception, and a stubborn, wounded pride took over. So what if you were? You've been lying to me this whole time, haven't you? Yes. Before, she had thought Jason loved her. He had called her his wife. She could accept him going out, going to school. But he shouldn't forget that from the beginning, her plan had been to lock him up at home, a simple canary in a gilded cage. It was her love that had made her loosen her crazed grip, that had shifted her boundaries. But now he had lied to her. He had never liked her at all, and she would be damned if she ever admitted to liking him. Where would that leave her pride? Fine. Since Miss Sterling only sees me as a tool, then let's have a clean break. You got the child you wanted. We don't need to see each other again. Hearing her words, what else could Jason say? He turned to leave. He didn't notice the crimson fire that flared in Clara's eyes behind him. Jason, do you really think you can leave New York without my permission? He was still trying to escape her, to leave her side. Clara was furious. She didn't want some ethereal, fleeting love anymore. Even if it meant he was just a canary in a cage, she would use any sordid method necessary to keep him by her side forever. Gazing at him, Clara's eyes darkened inch by inch. Bring my husband back to the estate. Starting today, put him on a regimen of muscle atrophy medication. Without my express permission, he is never to take another step outside the Sterling family home, she roared. But Jason didn't back down. Clara, if you insist on making a scene, there's nothing I can do. But let me tell you, Jason Miller is nobody's toy. If you want to come after me, fine. I'll be waiting for you at G Corp. But if you think I'm going back to the Sterling estate to be your canary, you can dream on. Anyone would have a breaking point. Hearing her call him a toy again and again, Jason's own anger boiled over. And you know what? If you say I'm a toy, fine, I'm a toy. I never liked you anyway. Do whatever you want. He was done arguing with this woman. He threw the words at her and turned to go. You. Clara was incandescent with rage. Jason, get back here. Jason, she screamed, a flicker of regret in her heart. She hadn't meant to say those things. But seeing him with Brooke, she couldn't control it. He was the one who had been lying to her, and she wasn't even allowed to say a single angry word. Jason. Clara fought back tears, about to scream his name again, when a sharp, stabbing pain suddenly shot through her abdomen. It was a wrenching agony, as if the babies could feel their mother's unhappiness and were protesting. Clara's cold face instantly went deathly pale. Her perfectly straight back buckled. A pained cry escaped her lips. Ava, my stomach hurts so much. Miss, your face. Why are you so pale? Ava looked at her, terrified. Miss, did you strain yourself? The babies. Doctor, somebody help. Ava shrieked, on the verge of tears. But the doctors on shift had just left for their rounds. No one heard her. Only Jason, who had already walked a good distance down the hall, heard her frantic cries. Fuck it. Hearing Clara's pained voice, he spat out the curse and, without a second's hesitation, sprinted back. It's normal for lovers to argue. Often, because neither is willing to be the first to back down, they drift apart. But not our main couple. He's coming to the rescue. The babies are definitely safe. Ava was still frozen in place, unsure what to do, when a figure shot past her and scooped the doubled-over Clara into his arms. What are you standing there for? Go get a doctor. Jason yelled, his face dark. He held Clara tightly and raced toward the emergency room. Ava stared at Jason's back, stunned for a moment before tears streamed down her face. Yes, she sobbed, and ran to find help. She knew it. She knew he still cared about her lady. They were both just too stubborn. Clara, don't fall asleep. Look at me. Jason held her, looking at her pain-whitened face and fading consciousness, and a wave of regret washed over him. Damn it. He had been so angry at her that he'd lost his head and said those things. He hadn't wanted it to be like this. But Clara's pride was a fortress. After what she said, how could he not get angry? He should have been more mindful of her condition. He never thought she could be this fragile. Jason, why did you come back? Clara was just as stubborn. Even cradled in his arms, feeling a pang of sorrow, her words were still sharp. Didn't he just say he never wanted to see her again, that they were strangers? Why come back now? Just shut up. Hearing her voice made Jason's head throb. I was afraid you'd die, and if you died in front of me, I'd probably never be able to get you out of my nightmares. His face was cold, his tone laced with a complicated mix of emotions. Clara's gaze flickered. A weak smile touched her lips. So, you came back because you were afraid I'd die in front of you, and you'd feel guilty? Jason, you really are a good person, aren't you? The kind of good person who just loves taking care of other women. Clara's eyes were cold. Though her face was pale, they burned with an intense possessiveness and dissatisfaction. Since he had come back, she would never let him go. She would never let him escape her side again. Whether her children survived or not, Jason Miller could only remain with her. Even in death, he would belong to Clara Sterling. An extremist resolve was forming in Clara's heart as Jason burst into the ER and grabbed the first doctor he saw. Doctor, please look at her. What's wrong with her? He said, gently placing Clara's small frame onto an emergency gurney. Okay, I'm on it. Please step outside, the doctor said, immediately switching into professional mode as a group of nurses swarmed around them. Jason was pushed out of the room. After the doors to the trauma bay closed, he and Ava stood outside, both sweating, anxiously waiting. The light above the door flicked on. The wait was agonizing for both of them. Sir, do you think Our Lady will be all right? Ava asked, her eyes filled with tears. She had practically grown up with Clara. She had just started seeing a real smile on Our Lady's face. And now this. If anything happens to her, I'll kill him right now. Another female bodyguard, her face hidden behind a mask, said, her voice dripping with menace. She glared at Jason, looking ready to do it. Jason didn't flinch. If you think killing me right now will make your lady better, you can do it any time. He had no patience for the bodyguard. This wasn't just his fault. Clara had always treated him like a toy, tried to imprison him. Was she blameless? That was illegal. He had rights. He wasn't her plaything. Coming back to save her was more than enough. You. The bodyguard was rendered speechless. Ava finally couldn't take it anymore. Can you two please stop fighting? The matriarch will be here any minute. Sir, you should probably think about how you're going to explain this. Ava glanced at Jason. The matriarch? The thought of that kind old woman made Jason feel a sudden pang of guilt. She was Clara's family. How would she react seeing her granddaughter like this? Because of him, Jason rubbed his temples, frustrated. He was unwilling to admit he had feelings for Clara, but seeing her in trouble left a heavy weight on his chest. And the thought of facing her family. He actually felt a little scared. I'm going out for a smoke. He tried to make a temporary retreat, but just as he reached the stairwell, the matriarch arrived. Clara, how is my Clara? Her grandmother, looking 10 years older in an instant, ran from the elevator, her voice choked with tears. She ran right into Jason. Seeing his face, she froze. A ghost? Ghost. The matriarch's face went white with terror. You haven't come to take our Clara away, have you? She panicked. Old people are often superstitious, and she had personally witnessed Jason's burial. The shock was too much. Her legs gave out. Ma'am. Jason was startled and instinctively caught her, his temple throbbing. Are you kidding me? First one faints, now another. Quick, get her heart medication. Ava rushed over. After a flurry of activity, they managed to revive the matriarch. It took another considerable effort to explain the whole fake death situation. The matriarch's gaze on Jason became strange. So this Jason was Mr. G. She had known it. She always felt there was something odd about the way Mr. G looked at her Clara. Her intuition had been right, and she felt that Jason wasn't as indifferent to Clara as he claimed. Otherwise, he wouldn't be this nervous. But she knew better than to meddle in the affairs of young people. She simply sighed and sat down. If the babies don't make it, you two should get a divorce, the matriarch said. I'll talk to Clara. We won't hold you to anything. She didn't want to see her granddaughter suffer anymore. But hearing the word divorce, Jason, who should have been happy at the prospect of freedom, felt a strange discomfort in his chest. A divorce? Right after losing the children? Wouldn't that be too much of a blow for Clara? Her health was already so fragile. Jason didn't realize that, without meaning to, he had already started to worry about Clara. He even felt an urge to say something to her grandmother. But before he could, the doors to the trauma room opened. He realized, with a start, that more than half an hour had passed. How is she? How is my Clara? The matriarch rushed forward and grabbed the doctor's arm, her voice tight with anxiety. Everyone relax. Miss Sterling just had a scare due to extreme stress, which agitated the pregnancy. Both the mother and the babies are fine. They're very healthy. But you all have been incredibly careless, the doctor said, his tone chiding. The patient is pregnant with twins. She needs rest and must avoid severe emotional distress. How could you let her get so agitated? The matriarch and the others let out a collective sigh of relief, tears of joy streaming down their faces. Thank goodness, thank goodness. Thank you, doctor. Jason stood in the back, silent, but his expression had softened considerably. He was glad Clara and the babies were okay. Otherwise, he really would have been consumed with guilt, even if he had never wanted those children in the first place. Please make way. The patient is awake. We're moving her to a private room, the doctor said, stepping aside. Soon, several nurses wheeled Clara out on a gurney. Jason stood to the side, watching as she lay there, her eyes closed, her face a cold mask. He said nothing, just followed silently behind as the matriarch and Ava escorted her to a private room. As they passed him, Clara's icy gaze scraped across his skin, making him profoundly uncomfortable. It felt like being targeted by a predator. Ahem, now that Clara's out, she's probably hungry. I saw some food stalls downstairs, I'll go get something. Feeling uneasy, Jason made an excuse and turned to leave as the others entered the room. From behind him, Clara's eyes instantly turned colder. Getting food? Heh, he's getting better and better at lying. Does he think I believe that? Fine, go ahead, she said, a mocking smile on her lips. Her tired eyes were half closed as she spoke, as if it were a casual remark. Jason felt a sense of relief and left. He thought she was too tired to press the issue, but he didn't see the look she shot at the black-masked female bodyguard the moment he was gone. Follow him. You know what to do. Clara's voice was devoid of any emotion, containing only a bone-chilling coldness. Understood. The bodyguard, the ghost, nodded immediately and led several other guards out of the room. Ava stood by, her face pale. Miss, actually, sir, he must have his reasons. He seemed very concerned about you just now. She tried to put in a good word for Jason, but Clara's frigid gaze snapped toward her. Ava, do you know why I didn't give this task to you? Ava's heart was too soft, and she was too straightforward. She was easily fooled by Jason. She was even taking his side. He has his reasons? What reasons could he possibly have? He deliberately faked his death to escape her, to mess around with Brooklyn, to tell Brooklyn they could start over. What possible reason could justify that? Even if he had some secret he couldn't share, she was carrying his children. What about the vows they made at their wedding? Was he just making a fool of her? She was done playing this boring game. She just wanted him back by her side. Only by her side. By any means necessary. It wasn't just for her anymore. Her children could not be without a father, and she would not allow him to so much as glance at another woman ever again. Yes, miss, Ava mumbled, falling silent. Meanwhile, Jason left Clara's room and headed for the hospital entrance. It had been a long night, and morning was breaking. The street outside was already bustling with food carts and small shops. The smells delicious. The cold morning air hit him as he stepped outside, clearing his head. Since he was supposedly buying food for Clara and Brooke, he uncharacteristically chose a decent-looking street vendor. Hey, one coffee and a couple of breakfast sandwiches, and a bagel with cream cheese, Jason said to the woman at the cart, pulling his jacket tighter against the late September chill. You got it, the woman replied, quickly bagging his order. Smells good. Jason realized he was starving too, so he ordered a coffee and a sandwich for himself. He started eating as he walked back toward the hospital. The sandwich was surprisingly good, the warmth spreading through his stomach. As he turned to go back inside, he caught a flash of a dark figure disappearing around a corner. He frowned but thought nothing of it. But the closer he got to the hospital, the stronger the feeling became that he was being followed. A sense of dread washed over him. Sprite, get a car and a plane ticket ready for me. Right now. Now on high alert, he pressed the chip behind his ear, speeding up while scanning his surroundings. He darted into an alley. Sure enough, a minute later, several figures appeared, among them the female bodyguard who had threatened to kill him outside the ER. Where'd he go? The ghost's voice was cold as she and her team entered the empty alley. He was here a second ago, then vanished. The little rat is fast, another guard said. The ghost's expression, hidden behind her mask, grew even darker. Split up and search. The boss gave the order. We bring him back today, no matter what. New York is only so big. Let's see where he can hide. He dares to bully Our Lady? Why get my hands on him? We'll see if the boss doesn't break his legs. Her eyes burned with murderous intent. Jason pressed himself against the alley wall, his own expression hardening. Of course, that woman was never going to let him go so easily. But he still had time. He had nothing left to do in the city. Heading abroad was a good option. With that thought, he scaled the wall and dropped down into another street. A few minutes later, an inconspicuous van pulled up to the curb. It was Sprite. Go. To the airport, Jason said, jumping in. Sprite looked like she wanted to say something, but seeing his urgency, she slammed on the gas. Luckily, the hospital wasn't far from the airport, 10 minutes tops. Sprite was a good driver, and since she didn't have a license, she knew all the shortcuts. The drive felt like a real-life game of Temple Run. Or more accurately, Escape from the Yandere. Seriously, he'd only been dead for a short while, and now he was on the run again? She wondered if he'd actually get away this time. The downside of her not having a license was that they had to park the van about a half-mile away and walk the rest of the way. Jason's heart was pounding in his throat. Back at the hospital, after a fruitless search, the ghost knew something was wrong. Miss, Jason is no longer at the hospital. He's likely fled. Fled. Hearing that word, Clara's face instantly darkened. He was fast. She had barely made her move, and he was already gone. You could almost call it a psychic connection. Yes, the ghost said, her head bowed. We've searched everywhere. What are your orders? Without a word, Clara ripped the 4-needle from the back of her hand. Lock down all airports. Get the car. We'll go to the nearest one now. Jason, this time, I will not let you get away. Yes, ma'am. The bodyguards nodded and rushed to prepare the car. Clara, her eyes red, got in and headed straight for the airport. Meanwhile, back at the hospital, Brooklyn was happily eating the fruit Jason had peeled for her, clutching the art of seduction. It was so sweet. She knew it. Jason still had her in his heart. He still cared about her. Even with her sore throat, eating this made her feel warm inside. But he had been gone for a long time. Just to get food? Why wasn't he back yet? You, go see if Jason is back yet. Brooke ordered a bodyguard. Yes, miss. The guard nodded and was about to leave when the door opened. Mister. Lee walked in, his expression unreadable. Miss, are you still waiting for that Jason Miller? He asked. He had just received the news. Jason was Mr. G. And more importantly, as he passed the hospital entrance, he'd seen the Sterling family cars suddenly leave and head for the airport. A quick investigation revealed the truth. Jason was running again. Furious at his foolish master, he had rushed to find Brooke. Brooke, however, was still blissfully unaware. Hearing Mr. Lee's tone, she dismissed it. Mr. Lee, I know you don't like Jason, but he's Mr. G. He's a suitable match for our family. What more is there to say? Besides, we're in love. Her expression was rapturous. In love. Mr. Lee scoffed. A suitable match? Miss, I think you've been completely bewitched by him. Do you really think he want to get you food? Let me tell you, 10 minutes ago he booked a flight to Europe. He's probably at the airport right now. You tell me, how is he supposed to marry into our family then? In love? More like in a lie. Only their precious young miss, who had been coddled her whole life and never deceived, would fall for a trickster like Jason Miller. What are you talking about? Brooke didn't believe him. Why would Jason run? Unless, did he figure out that I was planning to keep him by my side forever? Mr. Lee, exasperated, simply presented the evidence he'd found. The truth finally sank in for Brooke. He ran? He's going to Europe? Jason had run away again. When would he ever settle down? Just moments ago, he was peeling an apple for her, telling her he loved her. And now he was running off to Europe? Europe. She remembered. That was where Vivien was from. Was he running to find Vivien? Or was he just running away from her? He had lied to her again. Did he really not want to be with her that badly? Jason! Brooke roared, her eyes turning crimson. She felt a surge of blood rush to her head and staggered to her feet. To the airport now? Catch him. Bring him back to me, she screamed, shoving past Mr. Lee and her guards and storming out of the room. Mr. Lee panicked. Miss, why are you doing this to yourself? He had told her the truth to make her see Jason for who he was, not to send her chasing after him. While she was having her meltdown, in another room in the orthopedics wing, Vivien stared blankly out the window, looking as if all her energy had been drained. Her mind was filled with the image of Jason diving into the ocean to save Brooke. The anger and years of suppressed pain twisted inside her. Why? She had been forced to leave Jason back then. It wasn't her choice. And now, only 5 years later, some other woman had sunk her claws into him. No, it was all because of that woman, Brooke Lynn. That time she had run into Jason at the bakery near the orphanage, she could feel it. There was still a light in his eyes when he looked at her. Not this cold disgust. But now, every glance from him made her skin crawl. The pain was unbearable. If it weren't for Brooke Lynn, Jason would never have stopped loving her. Is he still with that Brooke Lynn? Vivien asked the bodyguard, her eyes red. The bodyguard timidly lowered her head. Yes, of course he was. He was with Brooke Lynn. Did he care about her that much? She was just a substitute. They had only known each other for a year. Why did he care so much? Help me up. I'm going to find him, Vivien said through gritted teeth, about to stand. Just then, her assistant burst in, looking panicked. Miss, I just saw Jason leave the hospital and head for the airport. Clara and Brooke Lynn went after him. What do you think is going on? The assistant had no idea what was happening, but it was clear the three of them were entangled in something, and Jason was at the center of it. Clara, Brooke, and Jason. Vivien's brow furrowed. Who did you see him with? I couldn't see clearly. He was with Brooke Lynn in the ICU, and I guess he said something that made Clara furious. She even had a pregnancy scare. Then Jason suddenly left for the airport. Brooke Lynn? He cared so much about Brooke that he was taking her abroad? He was abandoning Clara and their unborn children? What did that woman have that she didn't? Hearing Brooke's name, Vivien's face hardened. We're going too. Wherever Jason was going, she wouldn't let him leave her. She had just gotten back. She wasn't going to lose him again. At that moment, Jason and Sprite had already reached the airport and were standing at the boarding gate. Looks like Clara isn't here yet, Jason said, glancing back. Seeing no sign of her, he breathed a sigh of relief. But just as he was about to board, a familiar Maybach pulled up outside. Dozens of bodyguards poured out. Jason's pupils constricted. Crap, how is she so fast? He could board the plane now, but if Clara boarded right after him, he'd be trapped. Even if she didn't make this flight, she could just take the next one. He couldn't guarantee he wouldn't be caught. What do we do, Jason? Sprite asked, sensing the danger. Jason frowned, thinking hard. After a few seconds, he took off his jacket and quickly wrapped it around her. Sprite, I need you to do me one more favor. I'll wire you 20 grand for your trouble. Wear my jacket and get on the plane. Jason, what are you doing? Sprite asked, confused. You're giving me your jacket, but what about you? I'm going back to the children's home, Jason said, his voice firm. Those two mad women, Clara and Brooke, if they couldn't find him, there was no telling if they'd use the orphanage to threaten him. He had to go back and move the kids somewhere safe. Besides, he figured the most dangerous place was also the safest. If Clara and Brooke both thought he was headed for Europe, he'd stay right here in New York. The time it would take them to fly there and back would be more than enough for him to relocate everyone and disappear. It was a perfect plan, a classic case of luring the tiger out of the mountains. Jason felt confident it would work. Sprite nodded. Okay. She pulled on his jacket, tugged a baseball cap down low, and boarded the plane. Jason slipped into a corner, out of sight. Just as he concealed himself, Clara stormed into the terminal with her entourage. "Where is he?" she demanded, her eyes scanning the vast, nearly empty airport. A desolate coldness crept into her heart. Ava hurried over to a staff member. "Excuse me, did you just see a man in a gray jacket go through? About 6'1", very handsome, named Jason." "I did see someone in a gray jacket go through just now," the employee replied. "But he didn't seem to be over 6 feet. He already boarded. In fact, she thought he was probably closer to 5'7". He had a mask and a hat on, but his eyes were nice." "Okay, thank you." Ava nodded and immediately turned back to Clara. "Miss, that flight leaves in 2 minutes. I've already bought our tickets. He must be on board. We need to hurry if we're going to catch him." She'd messed up several times recently, and Clara had been furious. This time, she'd booked the tickets in advance and had a clear path. Surely this would appease her boss. Clara frowned. Not over 6 feet? She was suspicious. "Board the plane." "Now," she commanded. There was no time to think. She swept through the gate with Ava and a few bodyguards in tow. All she cared about was catching Jason. In her haste, she didn't bother to scan the airport one last time. The plane was about to take off, and that was the very mistake that gave Jason his opening. "Jason, you better hope I don't catch you, or I will skin you alive." Jason watched as Clara, radiating murderous intent, disappeared down the jet bridge. A thrill of satisfaction shot through him. He'd won the bet. He never thought the ever-cautious Clara Sterling would lose her composure like this. He just didn't notice the dark, unreadable expression in her eyes as she left. "First, let's go move Nana and the others," Jason muttered, shaking out his cramped limbs. He stepped out from his hiding spot and walked quickly out of the airport toward the taxi stand. But just then, another voice echoed from the entrance. "Did you find him? Is he on the plane?" "What? The plane already took off. Useless fools. You can't even keep an eye on one person." Brooke Lynn, her face a thundercloud, burst out of the Bentley. When she learned Jason's flight had departed, her expression turned venomous. "Book me on the next one. Now," she shrieked at her bodyguards, her eyes red. Even if she was a step behind, she had to catch up. She would absolutely not let Jason escape her. "Yes, yes, miss." The bodyguard scrambled to book new tickets. From his spot by the taxi, Jason felt a chill run down his spine. He'd almost forgotten about her. "Driver, let's go," he said, pulling open the taxi door and jumping in. But Brooke, standing a short distance away, seemed to sense him. She looked over instinctively. She saw a familiar silhouette and frowned. The clothes were different, but the posture, the build, it was so familiar. It looked like Jason. "Stop," she yelled, her voice sharp, pointing in his direction. Jason flinched, scrambling into the taxi even faster. "Driver, go, go, go," he urged, slamming the door shut. Brooke, who had only been slightly suspicious, was now absolutely certain. Jason, he didn't leave. That's definitely him. A look of pure joy spread across her face as she broke into a dead sprint. Huh. Inside the cab, the driver was confused. He was about to step on the gas when he saw Brooke charging at them. "Jason, get back here," she screamed, running straight into the path of the moving car. The driver, terrified by this lunatic, slammed on the brakes. The car screeched to a halt, inches from hitting her. "What the hell, lady, you got a death wish?" he yelled. Brooke ignored him, rushing to the side of the car and yanking the door open. "Jason, get your ass out of this car," she snarled, reaching in to grab him. Jason wasn't about to just sit there. He threw open the door on the other side and was about to make a run for it when he was stopped by a low, chillingly calm voice. "Husband, where do you think you're running to?" The woman's cool, pleasant voice always carried an air of strategic, aristocratic gloom. But right now, it was laced with a suppressed, killing intent and the spine-chilling coldness of a woman obsessed. Jason had just scrambled out of the car. Head down, the first thing he saw was a pair of black flats, a woman's pale ankles, and the scent of cold roses. In that instant, he froze, as if turned to stone. "Heh, fancy meeting you here," Jason said, his mouth twitching as he slowly raised his head. Of course, it was Clara, her beautiful, cold face twisted into a faint, chilling smile, her eyes staring at him with a bloodthirsty light. Hearing his words, she didn't get angry. She laughed, a sarcastic curl of her thin, red lips. "Yes, it is a coincidence, isn't it? If I hadn't specifically turned back, I might have actually let you get away today." She chuckled, playing with her long fingers, her beautiful eyes narrowing, growing colder by the second. "Did you really think I wouldn't catch you just because you swapped clothes with Lucy, luring the tiger from a mountain? Interesting, Jason. Are you playing me for a fool?" She wore flat shoes, but her presence was as powerful and icy as ever. She looked at Jason and was so furious she almost had a laugh. "I'm trying to have a relationship with you, and you're playing me with the 36 stratagems? Clara's gaze was glacial, but her eyes held a gentle cruelty. As if stroking her most beloved treasure, she smiled, raised a slender, pale wrist, and her cool hand came to rest on his cheek. "Did you think I was as stupid as that crazy peacock Brooklyn?" she murmured, her eyes flashing red as if dipped in blood. Her low voice was right next to his ear, as gentle as a lover's whisper, yet it chilled him to the bone. "Husband, have you perhaps underestimated your wife? Or is it that we just don't know each other well enough yet? Did you really think this would be enough to fool me?" Her voice was intimate, drawing closer and closer, cutting off all of Jason's escape routes. Despite her gentle tone, Jason could see the boundless possessiveness in her eyes. He tensed, taking a subtle step back. "Clara, what do you want?" Damn it. He knew it. He knew she hadn't been that careless. She was waiting for him right here. He had sold out Sprite for this, and now he was completely trapped. Jason's eyes darted left and right, desperately searching for a way out. Seeing him like this, Clara just smiled a strange, unnerving smile. "What do I want? What do you think I want? Why? I'm here to bring my husband home, of course." Her cold laugh was punctuated by a punitive squeeze of his cheek. "My naughty little husband, you love running away so much. I simply had to come and collect you myself. Of course, once we get home, you'll have to be punished." She spoke as if to herself, her crimson lips looking as though they might drip blood. Jason's throat went dry. Punishment? The hell with punishment. He hadn't even wanted to run that badly. He didn't just book plane tickets for fun. They cost a fortune. But this madwoman was completely unhinged. Even pregnant, who would dare stay by the side of someone so possessive? He'd be lucky if he didn't end up crippled or dead. Jason tried to reason with her. "Honey, you're overthinking this. I wasn't running away. I was just going abroad to buy you some blueberry muffins. You said you loved that special kind from overseas, right? I was just thinking, since you're recovering, you should have something nice to eat. That's why I was going." If you remember correctly, someone had mentioned wanting blueberry muffins. But at his words, Clara's face went completely black. "Blueberry muffins? Heh." She gave a cold laugh. "Husband, you truly break my heart. We're married, and you don't even know that I don't like sweets? Are you getting us confused?" As she recalled, the one with the sweet tooth had always been Brooklyn. A violent, murderous energy exploded in Clara's eyes. Her hand, still on his face, slid slowly down to his neck, her thumb coming to rest on his pulsing carotid artery. She fought the urge to sink her teeth into it right then and there. This man, he couldn't even be bothered to come up with a decent lie for her. Could he? Going abroad to buy muffins? Did he think this was a reality show? Did he think she would actually believe him? Ahem. Is that so? I guess it was Brooklyn who liked them. Jason's mouth twitched awkwardly. He finally remembered, a guilty look flashing across his face. It wasn't on purpose. There were just too many crazy women in his life. He was getting them mixed up. So what did Clara like? Right. Chocolate. "I was going to buy you chocolate," he said quickly. But it was too late. Clara's eyes were like daggers. She had no interest in hearing any more of his pathetic attempts at placation. She just stared at his moving lips, the fire in her chest raging. "Fine. Let's just say you were going abroad to buy me chocolate," she said. "But husband, I don't think you need to go. My staff can buy it for me. I'm almost 4 months pregnant. It's time for you to come home and be with me. The children and I will be with you forever and ever, until death do us part. You will never leave the Sterling estate again." She spoke with chilling finality, their faces so close their lips were inches apart. At that moment, Brooklyn, having finally made her way around the taxi, couldn't stand it anymore. She hadn't realized a person could escape out the other door. The second she rounded the car, she saw Clara and Jason, pressed intimately together. Clara, with her 4-month twin pregnancy just starting to show, had her hands on Jason's collar, their bodies close. The posture, the expression, it looked like a passionate embrace, a prelude to a kiss. A towering inferno of rage erupted in Brooke's mind. "Jason!" she shrieked, lunging forward and ripping Jason away from Clara. She shielded him behind her like a mother hen protecting her chick, her eyes blazing red. The sudden shove sent both Clara and Jason stumbling. Thankfully, Clara was wearing flats and only took a few steps back, her face a mask of cold fury as she looked at the newcomer. "Brooklyn," she gasped. Jason, without a second thought, stayed put behind Brooke. It wasn't that he was a coward. It was that Brooke, as crazy as she was, could be placated. Clara was too smart. She couldn't be fooled. Getting caught by her would have unimaginable consequences. He would rather be captured by Brooke. For instance, if he'd said he was going abroad to buy her blueberry muffins, she probably would have believed him. But to Clara, his action was the ultimate betrayal, and it ignited her rage. "Jason, get over here," she commanded, her voice dropping to a frigid whisper. Her icy gaze shot past Brooke, locking onto him. She looked like a vengeful god from the depths of hell. Jason shook his head. "Miss Sterling, I'm a little busy right now. I don't think I want to come over." Damn right. He'd have to be insane to walk over there. He wasn't about to sacrifice himself. Seeing him remain motionless, Clara got even angrier. "Jason!" she screamed, her chest heaving. Looking at him, unwilling to come to her side, a storm of fury and defeat swirled within her. He would rather stay with that rabid dog Brooklyn than with her? She was livid. Brooke, however, seeing this, suddenly brightened. Feeling the man behind her choosing her so resolutely, she was filled with an unprecedented sense of satisfaction and happiness. "Babe, I knew it. Between me and Clara, you love me the most." Her voice softened, her hand finding Jason's, her tone becoming sickly sweet. Her eyes welled up with tears. She had been furious when she came to catch him, but seeing him choose her over Clara without hesitation moved her deeply. Before, when Jason had told her he liked her best, she hadn't really believed it. Now she did. She turned her head, lifted her chin proudly, and looked at Clara with the air of a victor. "Clara, can you please stop harassing my man? It's because of you that Jason is so desperate to run away. Can't you just be normal for once?" She said this without a shred of self-awareness. Jason, standing behind her, felt a wave of second-hand embarrassment. "Buddy, you're in no position to talk. You're two peas in a pod, a couple of live wires." But both women were lost in their own worlds, and Jason's action had validated Brooke's delusion. "Brooke Lynn, you bitch." Clara, who had never resorted to swearing, finally snapped. The insult was clumsy, but it released a fraction of the fire burning in her heart. If she'd known it would come to this, she would have found a way to get rid of Brooke Lynn ages ago. Clara was drowning in a sea of hatred and regret. Brooke knew Jason was Mr. G, and that big-mouthed bitch had managed to keep it a secret from her the entire time. The two of them had conspired to deceive her. They'd even flaunted their affection right in front of her face. Clara would never forget the image of Brooke walking out of Mr. G's room at the Miller family mansion, wearing his clothes. At the time, she had dismissed Brooke as a shameless, flighty woman. But now, Clara felt like the world's biggest fool. If Brooke was wearing his clothes back then, did that mean they had already? The more she thought about it, the more she saw red. Her stare was so intense, it was as if she wanted to devour them both whole. By now, a small crowd had gathered in the private airport terminal, gawking at the scene. The whispers started immediately. "Wow, what a show. This guy's got it made. Two supermodels fighting over him." "Yeah, but it looks like both of them are a few cards short of a full deck." "You're telling me? Look how terrified he is." "I heard that one." A man gestured toward Clara, say she was going to kill them both. The murmurs reached the trio's ears. Brooke, shielding Jason, looked even more smug. A flicker of weary resignation crossed Jason's face. "Clara, I think you know exactly what the foundation of our relationship is," he said, his voice low and steady. "It was only ever about the children. And don't worry, I'll fulfill my duties as a father. Once they're born, I'll be there for them. I'll visit. They'll have trust funds, they'll be in my will. But I refuse to live a life locked away in the Sterling estate. That's not what I want." He was trying to reason with her to stop this humiliating public spectacle. "So please stop this." He was also genuinely confused. Clara herself had promised that once she was pregnant, she would let him go, guaranteeing his safety and flying him out of the country. Now she was pregnant, with twins, no less. What more could she possibly want? Maybe, for a fleeting moment, he might have wondered if she'd actually fallen for him. But she had been the one to admit, in no uncertain terms, that he was just a tool. And now that the tool had served its purpose, was she planning on disposing of it? Jason's patience was gone. "I've said my piece. I won't publicize the pregnancy. And I ask that you stop harassing me." He turned his back, his expression cold, and started to walk away. Her husband's heartless words were the final straw. Harassing him? Is that what she and their children were to him? A nuisance? An inconvenience? Then what were all those moments they'd shared? Now that she had given him her heart, he was just going to walk away without a shred of responsibility. "Jason, stop right there." Clara's eyes were bloodshot, shimmering with unshed tears. Her voice was raw, but she held her chin high, her pride battling the pain. "Jason." But no matter how she screamed his name, he didn't turn back. Brooke, after a final, bewildered glance at them, scurried to catch up with him. Watching them walk away together, the possessive, frantic obsession that Clara had been suppressing finally broke its chains. "Jason, I'm giving you 3 seconds to come back to me." Her voice was dangerously calm. "Otherwise, You can stay here forever." Her eyes turned dark and menacing. "I told you. The only way you leave me is if I'm dead." "Where you are." Ignoring the gasping crowd, her hand moved to her waist. Just as Jason was a few yards away, she pulled out a cold, black handgun and aimed it squarely at the back of his head. The terminal erupted into chaos. Onlookers screamed and scrambled for cover. The woman's chilling, lovesick voice forced Jason to a halt. "Clara, you're insane," he breathed, turning around. He stared at the woman holding him at gunpoint, and his own eyes began to redden with frustration and fury. He just didn't understand. Why did it have to be like this? Why did she have to turn everything into a mutually assured destruction scenario? But the obsession in Clara's eyes was absolute. "Call me whatever you want. Maybe I am insane, but even in my madness, I will never, ever let you leave me. Especially not with her," she snarled, tightening her grip on the pistol as she slowly advanced. Brooke flinched, a flicker of genuine fear in her eyes. This time, however, Jason refused to back down. "Fine," he said, his voice flat, his gaze locked on Clara's. After a long, tense silence, he spoke again. "If you want me dead, Clara, then pull the trigger." His face was a mask of cold fury. He was, by nature, a patient man, but even a saint had his limits. The anger he had suppressed for months was finally boiling over. He didn't want to die, but he wasn't some spineless coward to be toyed with, either. Clara looked at his resolute expression, and the manic certainty in her eyes suddenly fractured, replaced by a devastating vulnerability. "Jason, you'd rather die than be with me?" A bitter, broken laugh escaped her lips. "Fine, then let's die together." In a swift, shocking movement, she pressed the muzzle of the gun to her own temple. "If you hate me this much, then there's no reason for our children to exist, is there?" Her red lips curved into a smile that was both seductive and shattered, a single tear tracing a path from the corner of her eye. "Jason, I'll kill myself first, and then Ava, my security, will kill you and Brooke. How does that sound?" As she spoke, as if overcome with emotion, she clicked off the safety and slowly closed her eyes. But just before they shut completely, a cunning, cold glint flashed in their depths. If force wouldn't work, she would use weakness. She would trick him into coming back. She knew Jason was, at his core, a good person. She knew he had lost his own parents when he was 5. She remembered the flicker of hope and tenderness on his face when he first saw the ultrasound images at the hospital. She was betting on it. She was betting that he wouldn't just stand by and watch. He would never let anything happen to his children. And she was right. The moment Jason, who was several yards away, heard the distinct click of the safety being disengaged, his eyes widened in horror. "God damn it. I must have been a real son of a bitch in a past life to deserve you," he cursed under his breath. Without another thought, he charged back toward her. As Brooke watched in stunned disbelief, Jason snatched the gun from Clara's hand and slammed it into Ava's, his face a thunderous mask. "I'll go back with you," he bit out. "On one condition, you don't harm the children." Jason's voice was ice, but his eyes were a storm of complex, unwavering resolve. He could walk away from Clara. He could walk away from Brooke and Vivien. They had nothing to do with him. But now he had children. He was a father. He couldn't abandon his children. He couldn't let them suffer the same fate he had. "Jason, you really are a good man," Clara murmured, a broken smile touching her lips. She had thought they were husband and wife. They were married, legally, and had consummated that marriage. She had believed, on some level, that he must feel some marital affection for her, that he would return to her willingly. She never imagined she would have to resort to this to force him back to her side. Fine. Had she overestimated him, or overestimated herself? Clara didn't know. She just tilted her chin up against the cold, lonely wind, wiping away a tear before it could fall, and instantly transformed back into the proud, untouchable woman she was. Her icy gaze fell on Ava. "Take Mr. Sterling back to the car. We're going home." Her voice was frigid, her eyes narrowed with a dangerous light. Fine. If he was so unwilling to be with her, she would just have to change her plans. Maybe she should have never given him the illusion of freedom in the first place. Her original plan was just to bring him back to the Sterling estate. But now, with Brooke and Vivien circling like vultures, just keeping him there wasn't enough. This time, she would find a new place. A place to hide him away. "Yes, ma'am." Sensing the chilling shift in her boss's demeanor, Ava trembled slightly and approached Jason. "Sir, if you would please get in the car." Jason narrowed his eyes, gave Clara one last, long look, and finally moved toward the vehicle. Just then, Brooke, who had been frozen in shock, finally snapped back to reality. "Jason, don't go. I won't let you go. Come back." Her eyes instantly turned red as she watched him walk away. Just before he got into the car, she lunged forward and grabbed his arm. She was panicking. Everything had been going so well just moments before. Jason had been determined to leave with her. Why had everything changed so suddenly? She refused to accept it. Was it because of Clara's babies? Brooke's tear-filled eyes shot to Clara's slightly rounded stomach, and a wave of acidic pain washed over her. Of course, the children. A man like Jason would never abandon his own kids. If only she had his child. But now, he wouldn't even share a bed with her. "Brooke, calm down," Jason said, his voice weary. "Once this is all settled, I'll come back." He sighed, said nothing more, and followed Ava into the car. "No, don't. Jason, I don't want you to go." Tears streamed down Brooke's face as she tried to cling to him, but Ava and the bodyguards quickly separated them. Clara watched the scene unfold with a cold smirk. "Brooke, you should worry about yourself. I'll take care of my own husband. I don't need your help looking after him." She bit down on the last two words, her tone laced with venom. Brooke glared back, her pretty face turning ugly with rage. "Clara, if it weren't for those babies in your stomach, do you think Jason would even look at you? He's only going back because you forced him." She screamed, trying to puncture Clara's triumphant bubble. But Clara was unfazed. She stroked her stomach, her smile widening. "What's the matter? Jealous? I was able to get pregnant with Jason's children, twins at that. That's my talent. Unlike you, who dated him for a year with nothing to show for it." Clara's eyes drifted down to Brooke's flat stomach. "Don't tell me you two were together for over a year and never." You know, it was a casual, taunting remark, but it hit Brooke like a physical blow. "You, shut up. Do you think everyone is as disgusting as you are? We had a real connection." Brooke was completely triggered, her mind filled with regret. If only she and Jason had. But that time at the hotel, even when she was drugged, he hadn't touched her. Why? Why did this woman get a swoop in and take everything? She was supposed to be first. Now, this woman had taken his first time, and was even carrying his children. Clara's eyebrows shot up in genuine surprise. "No way. You were together for a year and never slept together." She glanced teasingly at Jason in the car, a strange sense of satisfaction blooming in her chest. So he really was a virgin. Inside the car, Jason listened to their argument, feeling his soul leave his body. "Clara, are we leaving or not?" he snapped, reaching for the door handle. "If you're not, I'm getting out." Christ, could these two women just shut up? A little more of this, and they'd air out all his dirty laundry. Saying he dated Brooke for a year, and they never even slept together. It was embarrassing. It was supposed to show he had standards. Clara raised an eyebrow, not at all annoyed. "Coming, honey." The word was deliberately syrupy, a sweet poison meant for Brooke, but laced with a chilling undercurrent of threat that sent a shiver down Jason's spine. He was really starting to hate it when women used pet names. It always made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. Seeing their display of twisted domestic bliss, Brooke finally snapped. "Fine. In that case, none of you are leaving today." Her eyes were wild. She lunged forward, grabbing Clara's arm. "Jason, if you leave today, it'll be over my dead body. And you, Clara, if I die, you're coming with me." In a flash of movement, Brooke snatched a dagger from a bodyguard's belt and pressed it against Clara's neck. The scene descended into utter chaos. Someone had already called the cops when Clara pulled the gun. Now, NYPD officers were swarming the area. Seeing the new development, their faces were a mixture of confusion and shock. Weren't those the daughters of the Sterling and Lynn families? What in God's name were they doing holding each other at knife point in a private airport terminal? The officers, guns drawn, cautiously approached. The captain in charge looked utterly baffled. "Miss Lynn, you need to calm down. This isn't a game. If you do this in public, your reputation in New York will be ruined for good." The captain knew Brooke Lynn. Pissing off her family was a bad career move. He tried to de-escalate, but Brooke was already on the verge of a breakdown. The thought of Clara taking Jason away was more than her possessive mind could handle. And Clara's words. Every single one had been a dagger to her heart. She knew that even if Jason didn't love Clara now, once the children were born, they would become a family. With time, he might grow to love her. She had a terrible premonition. If Clara took Jason away this time, she would never let him go. She would never see him again. And what about Vivien? She still needed an explanation from him. She couldn't leave. She had lost Jason once, and with it his first time and their marriage certificate. She didn't care about her reputation. "Stay back, or I'll kill her right now." Brooke shrieked, pressing the dagger harder against Clara's throat. A thin line of blood appeared on Clara's pale skin. Clara winced, a cold fury in her eyes. Normally, she could have disarmed Brooke in seconds. But she was pregnant, and her doctor had just warned her to avoid any strenuous activity. She couldn't risk harming the babies. Besides, her movements were becoming more cumbersome as the weeks went on. She decided to wait for an opening. It was at that exact moment that Vivien arrived, having rushed from the hospital. She took in the scene. Clara, held at knife point by an unhinged Brooklyn. She frowned, about to move forward, when she saw Jason get out of Clara's car. Clara's car. Vivien's eyes instantly reddened. They said Jason had escaped. Why was he in Clara's car? The NYPD captain was even more stunned. What the? He thought he was seeing a ghost. Jason Miller. Wasn't he dead? He had personally supervised the retrieval of the body from the river, had seen the DNA report with his own eyes. But here was Jason, alive and breathing, standing right in front of him. His brain short-circuited. Jason, however, ignored them all. He looked from Brooke to Clara with an expression that screamed, "I am so done with you two." He had told Clara to just leave. He knew Brooke would cause trouble. Now look, two drama queens, both too proud to back down, and one of them with a particularly vicious tongue. "Brooke, can you please let her go? We can sort this out later," he pleaded. No. Brooke was defiant. "You're just going to trick me again. If I let go now, you'll be gone forever. You're mine. No one can take you from me." Her voice cracked, turning into a desperate sob. She truly couldn't lose him again. Jason's jaw twitched. He'd probably used that line on her too many times. But he was losing his temper, too. "Yours? I'm not yours or hers. I belong to myself. What do you two want? To saw me in half and each take a piece?" The police captain found himself shamefully engrossed in the drama. This guy was firing the first shot in the revolution against gold diggers and psycho girlfriends. Jason felt like their entire concept of love was broken. A healthy relationship was supposed to be a source of warmth and support, a comfortable space, a safe harbor in a storm. This was just possession. If it weren't for the kids, he'd be long gone. Of course not. Clara and Brooke shouted in unison, for the first time in perfect agreement. Forgetting her pregnancy for a moment, Clara grabbed Brooke's wrist. "Brooklyn, Jason and I are legally married. Before you do something stupid, you'd better think about your family. You might not care about the old guard, but what about the rest of them? The women? The children?" It was a clear threat. Brooke's eyes flickered with indecision. Seizing the opportunity, Clara twisted Brooke's arm, trying to wrench the dagger away. Brooke resisted, but she was hesitating. She didn't want to hurt Jason's babies. He would hate her forever. She just wanted him back. The two women grappled, and the scene dissolved into chaos. Jason's eyes widened. He was about to jump in when he felt a hand on his shoulder. He spun around and found himself staring at a face he had once dreamed of day and night. A gentle, familiar face. Vivien. His voice trembled. He looked at the pale, teary-eyed woman before him, his expression turning wary. "What are you doing here?" He took a subconscious step back. She was dressed in casual clothes, her beautiful eyes shimmering with moisture. The wind tousled her dark hair, making her look fragile and broken. But for some reason, all he felt was a profound sense of distance. He was already at his wits' end with Clara and Brooke. He couldn't handle another entanglement. Before she had returned to the country, his obsession with Vivien had been all-consuming. But now, standing face-to-face with her, that obsession felt muted. Maybe Clara and Brooke had just drained all his emotional energy. His retreat clearly wounded her. "Jason, I'm here to help you," she said, her voice as soft as a spring breeze, laced with a delicate, vulnerable plea. It was her signature move. Jason wasn't falling for it. "No, thanks. You should go," he said, avoiding her gaze, trying to keep his own emotions in check. Vivien's fists clenched at her sides, the corners of her eyes turning red. "I know you don't trust me," she whispered. "But right now, Clara and Brooke are distracted. You don't have a car, but I do. It's just a few yards away. If you come with me, I can get you out of here." She looked up at him, her voice a siren's call, hypnotic yet seemingly pure. Jason glanced over at the two women still wrestling with each other. He was tempted, but his instincts screamed at him to refuse. "No, thank you. I can't trust you." His voice was cold, and Vivien's eyes immediately welled up. She gripped her fists tighter, fighting back the tears, and then let out a bitter little laugh. "Jason, we had 8 years together at the children's home. Even when I left, I had my reasons. Reasons I couldn't control." She took a step closer. "Come with me now, and I'll explain everything. Besides, I have no reason to hurt you. Do I?" Vivien reached out and tugged at the sleeve of his shirt, her long lashes wet with tears. Her eyes were so clear, so sincere, it was impossible to see any deception. Jason looked at her, heard the pain in her voice, and his resolve began to soften. "All right," he finally conceded. He took one last look at the chaotic struggle between Clara and Brooke, then turned and walked toward Vivien's car parked a short distance away. Compared to Clara and Brooke, Vivien still seemed normal. She had left him once, yes, but she wasn't the type to lock him in a cage. After all, she made it clear she didn't love him. Otherwise, she wouldn't have left for another country in the first place. With that thought, Jason felt a sense of relief. He didn't see the flash of wild joy in Vivien's eyes as he turned his back. It worked. He still trusts me. Her face lit up as she followed him. Meanwhile, the captain and his officers finally managed to pull Clara and Brooke apart. "You crazy bitch," Clara spat, touching the bleeding scratch on her neck. "Is this how the Lynn family raises its daughters? You have no class." Brooke, held tightly by an officer, shouted back with equal venom. "Look who's talking. Stealing someone else's boyfriend. Give me back my Jason." "Give him back." Clara laughed coldly. "Is it my fault you couldn't keep him?" She turned, triumphant. "Honey, let's go." She reached into the car to take Jason's hand, but grabbed only air. Her brow furrowed. "Honey." She turned her head, only to find the car completely empty. "Jason." Her pupils contracted. She whipped her head around, searching the area outside the car. There was no sign of him, only a bewildered-looking Brooke Lynn and the NYPD officers. If they hadn't all seen him just moments before, the captain would have sworn he'd imagined the whole thing, or had actually seen a ghost. The moment Clara realized Jason was gone, she panicked. "Jason? Where is Jason?" she shrieked, her crimson eyes locking onto Ava and the team of bodyguards. The temperature around her dropped 20 degrees. "Sir was right here a second ago," Ava stammered, her lips trembling with fear. She had been so focused on protecting Clara that she hadn't been watching Jason. She'd assumed he couldn't possibly escape, surrounded as he was by their people. But somehow, he had vanished into thin air. "Useless," Clara finally swore. "Lock down every bridge and tunnel out of Manhattan. I want eyes on every airport. He is not leaving this city." Her eyes were blazing. She shot a venomous glare at Brooke. "Are you happy now? If you hadn't caused a scene, he wouldn't have run away. After everything she'd done, he still ran? She should have chained him to her side from the very beginning. Now he was gone, and he was on high alert. Finding him again would be infinitely harder." Rage and murderous intent simmered inside her. She turned a cold gaze on Ava. Find out who else was near this terminal today. She didn't believe for a second that Jason could have escaped on his own. Someone helped him, and she was going to find that person and tear them limb from limb. "Why are you blaming me? You're the one who stole him," Brooke muttered, though she too was starting to have her doubts. She didn't want Jason in Clara's clutches, but she didn't want him to escape, either. Where would he go? Would he come find her? Or would he go to Vivien? A sick feeling settled in her stomach. Meanwhile, Vivien was already driving Jason down a series of back roads with no surveillance cameras. "There are no cameras here," Vivien said softly, glancing at Jason beside her in the back seat. "I was worried Clara and Brooke would come looking for you, so I took this route. I hope you understand." "Thanks," Jason nodded, his eyes fixed on the driver up front. His tone was still cold, and his mind was on high alert. They had known each other for 8 years, but she had been out of the country for a long time. "People change. Are you really that afraid of me?" Vivien asked, a flicker of hurt in her eyes as she sensed his distance. Jason shook his head, not looking at her. "You're overthinking it." "Am I?" Vivien's eyes reddened. "Are you still angry with me? For leaving you and going abroad?" Her voice was barely a whisper, thick with suppressed emotion. Jason didn't answer. The car fell silent. The road was bumpy, the scenery outside flashing by like a half-remembered dream. The wind rustled through the trees. For a moment, Jason was transported back to that summer at the children's home. The pure, simple joy of those days when he and Vivien would take the free city bus on weekends and just wander. Back then, it had felt so ordinary. Now, looking back, it was a beautiful dream he could never return to. Perhaps, from the moment Vivien left the country, their story was destined to end with them as strangers. After a long silence, he finally spoke. "Vivien, what happened back then is in the past." His voice was quiet. "Maybe we both had our regrets, our resentments, but it's time to let it go. You were leaving for a better future. You don't have to explain anything to me." He didn't blame her, but he couldn't go back to the way things were. He felt that this, letting go, was for the best. But Vivien didn't want to let it go. "Jason, have you really moved on? I don't believe you. If you had, you never would have gotten in my car today. You only think you've moved on. In reality, you're just running away from it." Her eyes were red as she spoke. Jason's expression darkened, a lump forming in his throat. "Don't," he said, his voice strained. He didn't want to talk about this. But Vivien suddenly looked up at him, her beautiful eyes brimming with tears, and pushed up the sleeve of her shirt. Jason, I told you I would explain everything if you came with me. So now I'll tell you. She held out her wrist. Her skin was pale and delicate, but it was covered in the faint, overlapping scars of countless needle marks. The sight of those marks finally broke through his composure. "What is this?" he demanded, grabbing her wrist, his voice turning cold and hard. He had thought he was over her, but seeing her hurt ignited a strange, protective anger in him. Seeing his concern, Vivien's lips curved into a deeply satisfied smile. "Jason, you do still care about me, don't you?" she whispered, her hand moving to gently cup his cheek. "Vivien." Jason flinched as if he'd been shocked, pulling his hand away. What the hell happened? Vivien was supposed to have been adopted by the wealthy Sue family. With their resources, how could she have ended up like this? A dark suspicion began to form in his mind. Vivien's next words confirmed his fears. "I never wanted to leave the children's home," she began, wiping a tear from her eye. "I had no choice. You probably don't know, but the Sue family had another daughter. She was diagnosed with acute leukemia and needed a bone marrow transplant. They came to the home looking for a match, and they found me." She paused, her voice trembling. "At first, I refused to go, but they threatened the director, and they threatened you. I had to go with them." She had to leave, but she was filled with resentment. She had vowed to dismantle the Sue family from the inside, to pay them back for every ounce of pain they had inflicted on her and the orphanage. She hadn't told Jason the truth because she was afraid of what he might do in his anger. She knew that even if she explained it all later, he might not believe her. She had prepared herself for that. But seeing the cold disappointment in his eyes now still broke her heart. Only after dealing with Julian Sue, one piece of the puzzle, could she finally tell him everything. "Are these from the transplant, or from blood draws?" Jason asked, his own eyes turning red as he listened. A part of him was still skeptical, but anger was quickly overwhelming it. "Blood draws," she confirmed. "I have scars from the marrow extraction, too. I can show you." To prove it, she knew he didn't fully believe her. In these circles, everyone was an actor. You needed undeniable proof. Biting her pale lip, she slipped off her jacket. Her back, otherwise flawless, was a canvas of crisscrossing scars, old and new. Jason's eyes turned bloodshot. "Those bastards," he growled. "Why didn't you tell me? Vivien, you've been living like this all these years." His hands clenched into fists. Seeing the girl he had once loved, now so broken, laying her trauma bare before him, was like a knife to the heart. His last doubts evaporated. He couldn't know if her whole story was true. He'd have Sprite investigate later, but the scars on her back were proof enough of her suffering. The resentment he had harbored for her leaving him finally dissolved. "If you had told me, maybe I could have helped," he said, his voice thick with emotion. He started to reach out, to touch the scars on her back, but stopped himself. Vivien saw the movement. "Jason, do you believe me now?" she asked, tears glistening in her eyes. She reached out and grabbed his large hand, pressing it to her heart. "I didn't want to drag you into this, but I truly had no choice but to leave. Jason, can you please stop being angry with me?" She shed all her defenses, her eyes shimmering with a heartbreaking plea. She hated using such tactics, but she knew this was Jason's weakness. For him, she would do anything. As she hoped, he sighed, his anger deflating. "Vivien, I was never really angry with you. No matter what, you were the one who took care of me at the orphanage. He just hadn't wanted to stay in touch after she left. That was all." "Really?" she asked, her gaze hopeful. "Really," Jason promised. "And if I find out the Sue family forced you to go, I won't let it slide." His eyes flashed with a murderous intent. The Sue family would pay. He softened his tone, gently helping her put her jacket back on. "It's cold. You should cover up." Vivien murmured, a tearful smile finally breaking through. "Then, Jason, can we go back to how we were before?" she asked, looking up at him, her eyes shining with anticipation. It was the question she had been dying to ask. Go back to how things were. The question echoed in his mind. Could they? He hesitated. Logically, they were childhood sweethearts. Now that the misunderstanding was cleared up, he should be happy. He should be able to go back to the way things were. He couldn't deny the feelings he'd had for her at the orphanage. But at this moment, looking at Vivien's gentle face, the face he had longed for, seeing the hope in her eyes, he opened his mouth, but no words came out. In their place, two other faces materialized in his mind, uninvited. If he got back together with Vivien, what about Clara and Brooke? Yes, Vivien had her reasons. But he and Clara were legally married, and she was carrying his children. Even if she was a lunatic, he couldn't, in good conscience, agree to be with Vivien right now. And he didn't have the energy for it. And then there was Brooke. His feelings for her were complicated. People always assumed the first love, the white moonlight, was invincible. They thought the moment she reappeared, the game was won. But what about the one who came after, the one who left her own indelible mark? When the white moonlight finally returns, you often realize that what you missed wasn't the person, but who that person was during a specific time in your life. He missed the pure, intense connection he'd shared with the Vivien at the children's home, not necessarily the woman sitting in front of him now. So, in the end, he made his choice. Vivien, what's past is past. Let's just leave it there. Jason's face was serene, as if he had truly let everything go. Vivien's hopeful expression shattered, darkening with each passing second. Past? Is that so? She whispered, more to herself than to him. A dangerous, crimson light flickered in the depths of her eyes. Let go? How could she? Everything she had done, every sacrifice she had made, was to get back to him. She had kept the truth from him because she was afraid the Sue family would hurt him. She thought Julian Sue and his family were the only obstacle between them. She thought once they were gone, she and Jason could be together again. She never imagined that in the few short years she was gone, his life would become so complicated. He had other women. Clara was pregnant. Had she lost him forever, all because of one mistake? She refused to accept it. Staring at the face she had dreamed of for years, Vivien's eyes began to burn, her raw emotion twisting into a dark possessiveness. Past. Let go? Not until she was dead. If he wouldn't come back to her willingly, she would find another way. She quickly masked the fury in her eyes, her expression smoothing back into one of calm acceptance. Jason, I don't think we should be strangers. But if that's what you want, I won't push it. She watched his face, forcing a small smile. The tightness in her chest subsided, her beautiful features betraying nothing. She was perfectly composed. Jason let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. For a second there, when he'd said the word past, Vivien's whole demeanor had shifted. The air had turned to ice. He thought she was going to explode. The pressure radiating from her felt even more intense than Brooke's. But, surprisingly, she was being incredibly reasonable. Glad you understand. It saves us both a lot of trouble, he said, trying to lighten the mood. See, this is the difference. You've been abroad. You're more sophisticated. Not like Clara and Brooke. You can't reason with them at all. You're much more rational. Rational? Vivien said nothing. The car was silent again. Jason felt a pang of awkwardness. You could just drop me off near the old children's home. No need to go out of your way, Miss Sue. He kept his tone polite, distant. But polite and distant wasn't what Vivien wanted. All right, to the children's home it is, she said, her voice smooth, her eyes unreadable. From his center console, she picked up a can of Red Bull and offered it to him. You must be thirsty after all that talking. Here. It was the same drink she had planned to give Bianca. Jason froze. He looked up at her. Her face was a perfect oval, her smile gentle and serene. Her almond-shaped eyes were like placid pools of water. But the faint smile on her lips sent a chill down his spine. No, thanks. I'm not thirsty, he said, forcing a smile, trying to refuse. After his experiences with Clara and Brooke, he knew better than to accept drinks from strange, or even familiar, women. Vivien's eyes instantly clouded with hurt. You don't trust me? She asked, her brow furrowed, a hint of pressure in her voice. Jason's throat tightened. She was backing him into a corner. If he refused, who knew what she would do? They had just cleared the air. He didn't want to make things tense again. He let out an awkward laugh and took the can. Thanks, Miss Sue. Under her unwavering gaze, he popped the top and took a small sip. Don't be so formal, Jason. You never used to call me Miss Sue, Vivien said, a triumphant glint in her eye now that he had taken a drink. He used to follow her around like a puppy, calling her his wife. She had found it cringy at first, but when he'd stopped, she'd felt a strange pang of loss. Huh, right? Jason replied with a dry laugh. The moment she turned to look out the window, he quickly spat the mouthful of liquid into a handful of tissues. No way was he drinking that. He knew it was a trap, but he also knew she wouldn't give up, so he decided to play along. Under her watchful eye, he pretended to succumb to the drug, slumping over in his seat. He would see what she was really planning. Then he'd figure out his next move. As he feigned unconsciousness, he felt Vivien's cool fingers gently stroking his cheek. Jason, I didn't want to do this. Please don't be mad at me, okay? She whispered, her voice a near-maniacal murmur. If you had just been a good boy, if you hadn't rejected me, we could have gone back to how things were. We could have gone back to the children's home together. Isn't that what you want? Her voice dropped lower. But why did you have to talk about leaving? Her cold fingers traced the line of his jaw, sending a shiver down his spine. Her words made his blood run cold. What the hell was she talking about? This dialogue, it was all wrong. The Vivien he remembered wasn't like this. She was kind and gentle. This felt different, twisted. A sense of dread washed over him. The driver's voice cut through the silence. Miss, are we still going to the children's home? Or back to the States? The States? Jason's scalp prickled. Was she planning on taking him back with her? Had she been infected by Clara and Brooke's brand of crazy? No, it couldn't be. Neither. Vivien's voice was a relief, but her next words made his heart stop. Jason has just gone missing. Clara and Brooke will have every airport, train station, and port locked down. If we go now, we'll be caught. She looked down at the man beside her, a sly smile playing on her lips as she playfully pinched his cheek. But when I first came back, I bought a villa, a place no one could find. We'll go there. Okay, that way, no one can ever bother us again. No one can ever find us. How's that sound? Vivien's low, mesmerizing laugh was enough to make his hair stand on end. It was as if she were talking to him, but also to herself. Jason felt every muscle in his body tense. His heart, which had been tentatively suspended, finally plummeted. She really was planning on kidnapping him. Thank God he hadn't actually swallowed that drink. He had to find a way out of this. He kept his eyes closed, feigning sleep, as the car continued down the bumpy road. He couldn't see where they were going, but he cracked his eyelids just enough to memorize the names on the street signs flashing by. Meanwhile, Clara's team had searched everywhere, but found no trace of Jason. They returned, defeated. Ma'am, we couldn't find him. It doesn't look like he's left the city yet, Ava reported grimly. With every exit point under surveillance, it would have been impossible for him to slip through. He hasn't left the city. Clara's face darkened, a storm gathering in her eyes. Did you investigate every vehicle that left the terminal? One of those cars had to have been his getaway. How could they have missed it? We did. All of them checked out, except for one car with fake plates. And one other thing. Julian Sue left the hospital today. Ava hesitated. Our sources at the hospital said she checked out right after we did. The name Vivien made Clara's eyes narrow. She checked out right after her. Clara refused to believe that Vivien, hearing the news, wouldn't have come to the airport. There was only one explanation. Vivien was there, and she was the one who took Jason. No one else in New York could pull something like this off right under her nose. Track Vivien's location now. Find her. Clara's eyes were blood red with fury. Fine. So, this was how it was going to be. She had helped Vivien, had even saved her from drowning, and this was how she was repaid? This ungrateful bitch had stolen her husband from right under her nose. She should have let her drown in the river. And Jason. She had to threaten suicide just to get him to come back to her. Yet Vivien was able to spirit him away without a sound. It was true then. He still had feelings for her. She had thought, after he chose to save Brooke over Vivien at the river, that his feelings for Brooke were stronger. She never imagined that while she and Brooke were fighting, Vivien would be the one to swoop in and claim a prize. Send this information to Brooke Lynn, she commanded. She wasn't going to sit back and watch. Let Brooke know. With Brooke's explosive temper, she wouldn't take this lying down. Let's see how smug Vivien was then. Yes, ma'am, Ava said, immediately making the call. Jason's car, after a long, bumpy ride, finally pulled into a rest stop. Watch him. I'm going to the restroom, Vivien said to the driver after a long look at Jason. Before she left, she pulled out a lipstick and applied a fresh coat in the rearview mirror, her expression unreadable. She truly didn't want to play these games with Jason. But if she didn't, he would never be hers. She just wished he would be a good boy and cooperate. Yes, miss. The driver, seeing Jason sound asleep, locked the car doors and got out to have a cigarette. This was his chance. Jason slowly opened his eyes. The sky had grown dark, and the car's interior was dim. He peered through the window and saw they were parked in front of a convenience store at a highway rest stop. The area was surrounded by woods. It was unfamiliar territory. Vivien was inside the store, and the driver was distracted. He calculated he had just enough time to make it to the trees. He raised his elbow and slammed it against the window. HNNGH. Damn it, it didn't break. Pain shot up his arm. Built tougher than it looks, he thought grimly. The loud thud got the driver's attention. Gritting his teeth, Jason slammed his elbow against the glass again with all his might. Crack! The window shattered. Without a second's hesitation, Jason scrambled out and bolted for the woods. Miss! Miss! He's running! The driver yelled toward the convenience store. Vivien rushed out, her eyes landing on Jason's retreating figure. A look of deep disappointment crossed her face. He still ran. She whispered, her voice turning cold, almost pathological. He really doesn't want to be with me, does he? She had explained everything. Why couldn't they just go back to the way they were? All she wanted was to return to those days at the orphanage. But he had told her it was in the past. To let it go. How could she let it go? The night wind was cold, whipping strands of hair across her face. She stared after him for a long moment, her eyes turning red, before wiping away a tear and pulling out her phone. She pressed the record button on a voice message. Get him. Bring him back. Her voice was low and steady. She put the phone away and got back in the car. The driver followed, and they sped off in the direction Jason had run. Once inside the woods, Jason noticed that Vivien wasn't following him. The forest was eerily silent. A terrible feeling crept over him. This was too easy. He had heard the driver yell. Why wasn't she chasing him? His heart began to pound like a drum. This wasn't right. Vivien was too smart for this. Then he saw it. A glint of white light flashing between the trees up ahead. His eyes widened. It was a trap. He immediately changed direction, running back toward the rest stop. He wanted to contact Sprite, but she was on a plane. He had no choice but to take the gamble. As he raced back, Vivien's assistant and a team of bodyguards arrived at the edge of the woods. He got away. Search the area, the assistant commanded. Vivien, on her way to meet them, got the message. A dangerous glint appeared in her eyes. She scanned the surroundings. There was nowhere else to hide. There was only one place he could have gone. Turn around. Go back. At Vivien's command, the entire team reversed course, heading back toward the highway rest stop. Jason, having shaken the figures in the woods, stumbled back into the convenience store, breathing heavily. The clerk looked at him as if he'd been chased by a pack of wolves. Sir, can I help you with something? No, thanks. Jason waved him off, keeping one eye on the entrance, terrified Vivien would reappear. He pulled out his phone to call one of his subordinates at G-Corp. Sprite might be out of commission, but he still ran a company. The call connected instantly. Jason? Why are you calling personally? His employee asked, surprised. No time to explain, Jason said, wiping sweat from his forehead. I'm sending you my location. Get a car here. Now, on it. Jason let out a sigh of relief and walked to the counter to buy a bottle of water. He had just twisted it open and taken a sip when the glare of several headlights flooded the store's entrance. His pupils contracted. He spun around to run, but it was too late. The convenience store had only one entrance. He was trapped. A woman's voice, soft and haunting, echoed from the doorway. Jason, I thought we agreed to go back to the children's home together. You haven't been a very good boy. Vivien stood at the entrance, wrapped in a beige trench coat, her feet in nude heels. Her beautiful almond eyes were narrowed into slits, glowing with a dangerous, predatory light. Her voice was normal, but it made the hair on his arm stand up. It was the feeling of being hunted. Behind her, her assistant and a team of bodyguards blocked the only exit. Vivien, what the hell do you want? Jason's face hardened, his voice a low growl. He was so sick of this. Sick of running, sick of hiding. He didn't want to run. But these women were all completely, utterly insane. He knew Vivien was smart. He had tried to pull a fast one, but she hadn't fallen for it for a second. This woman was harder to fool than all three of the others combined. At his question, however, Vivien's eyes filled with a wounded, lonely expression. Jason, do you hate me that much? She asked, her eyes turning red. The cold wind had flushed her pale cheeks, making her look fragile and heartbreaking. Her voice was thick with a choked sob. She was playing the victim again. Jason knew she would. He deliberately turned his head away. You're overthinking it. You could just drop me here. I don't need you to take me to the children's home. We can go our separate ways. He took a swig of water and turned to leave. Vivien finally lost her composure. Jason, she cried, her eyes flashing red. She grabbed his hand, and hot tears streamed down her face. Jason, don't say that, okay? We just found each other again. How can we just part ways like this? She wanted to be with him forever. An eternity. Shouldn't he want that too? How could he even think of leaving? I know you don't trust me yet. I know you're just saying these things because you're angry. We had 8 years together. You can't just throw that away. Please stop fighting this. Come home with me, okay? I won't be like Clara or Brooke. We could be like we were before. Just like at the children's home. I'll even dance for you again. Okay. Tears fell freely as she gazed up at him, her red lips a perfect, tragic bow. Her small hands clung to his, her voice taking on a desperate, pleading tone. She looked like a child about to be abandoned, both defiant and pitiable. It didn't matter that her leg was injured and she couldn't dance for months. If it meant getting Jason back, she would do anything. Her touch sent a jolt through him. He remembered the good times. Looking at her tear-streaked face, her pale lips, a part of him wanted to forget everything and pull her into his arms. But the reality was those days were gone. He was a married man. At least for now, he couldn't agree to her request. Vivien, you don't have to do this. You don't have to debase yourself, he said, forcing himself to gently push her hand away. But he couldn't stop himself from wiping the tears from her cheek. Don't cry. You'll mess up your face. His voice softened. Women, he knew, needed to be placated. But that didn't mean he was going to risk his own safety and go with her. It was time for a little placating and a lot of deception. Vivien, let me handle what I need to handle, and then I'll come find you, okay? We can talk about the past then. I'm just really busy right now. Can you just be good and try to understand? Jason coughed, feeling ridiculous saying the words, and awkwardly patted her on the head, trying to soothe the agitated woman before him. But his words sounded very different to Vivien. Busy? She hadn't noticed him being busy with anything. Busy making babies with Clara? Or busy playing romantic games with Brooke? Using her as a stand-in? His clumsy attempts at deception might work on that psycho peacock and that lovesick fool, but she knew him better than anyone. Did he really think she would fall for it? She was certain that the moment she let him go, he would disappear for good. And telling her to be good, was he trying to PUA her? Nice try. That wasn't going to work on her. And in truth, that was exactly what Jason was planning. Just get through this, and then he was never going near any of these 3 psycho women again. But Vivien saw right through him. She saw the guilt in his eyes that always appeared when he was lying. A cunning glint appeared in her own. Okay then. Jason, you'll really come back and find me? She asked, her voice filled with false hope as she clung to his hand. Jason saw his opening and nodded enthusiastically. Of course. I'm just a little swamped right now. A man's business. She wouldn't understand. Besides, he was a catch. He didn't frequent shady clubs. He was a model of fidelity. He was just busy escaping. Okay then, Vivien smiled, her eyes fixed on his lips. Then give me a kiss. A flicker of anticipation crossed her face as she tilted her head up, moving closer to him. Huh? A kiss? Jason's mouth twitched. He instinctively glanced around the convenience store. Here? I don't think that's a good idea. The convenience store was full of people. The clerk, her bodyguards, her assistant. It was way too public. It was humiliating. As if on cue, the clerk and all the bodyguards and assistants who met his gaze immediately and unanimously turned their backs. We see nothing. We hear nothing. Jason's temple throbbed. He was speechless, but Vivien's face was already inches from his. Seeing his hesitation, her expression soured. Jason, you won't even kiss me. How am I supposed to believe you? If you don't, then you're not leaving today. She crossed her arms, deploying the ultimate female weapon. I don't care. What kind of logic is that? Jason felt his mind fraying. He said he would find her, not that he wanted to date her. And why did his virtue have to be the collateral? I don't care, Vivien repeated, pouting. You won't even try to placate me? She was so easy to please. You could do it for Clara and Brooke. Why not for her? What was she lacking? One kiss and you'll let me go? Jason asked, his face flushed. He was finally surrendering to the forces of evil. Vivien's eyes lit up instantly. Of course, I'm a woman of my word. As long as you can walk out of here on your own, my people won't stop you. A sly look flashed in her eyes. Fine, let's get this over with. Jason threw caution to the wind and turned to face her. He hadn't really let himself look at her until now. Vivien had been his first crush. Her delicate, oval face, her perfect features. She was like a dream. She had the soft, stunning beauty of the moon, the kind that steals your heart. Every feature was perfectly aligned with his preferences. No matter how many times he looked at her, his heart would still skip a beat. That's why he had trailed after her like a lovesick puppy, calling her his wife. But the thought that this beautiful woman was very likely a complete lunatic instantly doused any romantic notions. Ahem. Jason cleared his throat, pushing aside his awe, and leaned in to give her a perfunctory peck on the cheek. Her skin was soft and cool, like a baby's, with a faint scent of jasmine that made him want to linger. But he was a man of discipline. He pecked and immediately pulled back. Vivien's eyes instantly showed her displeasure. Not enough, she breathed, her voice a seductive whisper. A shocking, feverish heat flashed in her eyes. Before Jason could react, she grabbed him by the collar and pressed her lips to his. The softness was stunning. For a second, he felt like he was sinking into a beautiful dream, a place he never wanted to leave. He was shocked. He never felt anything like it. Clara's kisses were possessive, Brooke's were clumsy and endearing. But Vivien was like a cool breeze on a hot summer day. So gentle, it was almost unreal. He froze, letting her deepen the kiss. As the scent of jasmine filled his senses, he almost lost control. Technically, this was their first real kiss. He hadn't expected it to happen like this. He found himself reluctant to pull away. Vivien seemed to sense his hesitation, and what was meant to be a retreat became an advance. But the height difference made it difficult. She was on her tiptoes, and he wasn't helping. A fine sheen of sweat appeared on her forehead. This blockhead wasn't even participating. Jason, are you made of wood? She muttered, annoyed. This wasn't like when he was a kid, following her around chanting wife, wife, wife. Embarrassed, Jason's hands moved instinctively to her waist to steady her. It was impossibly slender. With his support, her kiss became easier, more confident. He couldn't bring himself to push her away. He found himself mesmerized by her beauty, by the flutter of her long, thick eyelashes. He wondered, if Vivien had never left the country, would things have been different? A wave of dizziness washed over him. His eyelids grew heavy. He suddenly realized something was wrong. Vivien, what did you do? He slurred, shoving her away as the world began to spin. It was the jasmine scent. It was coming from her lips. It was a trap. Vivien saw his reaction and smiled, a look that was both gentle and terrifyingly dangerous. Jason, I really didn't want to do this. But if I let you go today, would you really come back? Everything you just said. It was all a lie to trick me, wasn't it? She murmured, her voice soft, revealing she had seen through him all along. Guilt flashed in Jason's eyes. Trick you? Don't I have a right to my own freedom? If it weren't for these three psychos, would he be resorting to this? But Vivien didn't care about any of that. All she knew was that she had spent years clawing her way out of the Sue family's grasp. She would not allow Brooke Lynn or Clara Sterling to just walk away with what was hers. So, you lied to me once, and I lied to you once. That makes us even. She hadn't done anything that complicated. When she'd gotten out of the car, she had simply mixed a sedative into her lipstick. All he had to do was be willing to kiss her, and she could take him away. If he had been a little more heartless, he could have avoided this. But the fact that he hadn't proved that he still had feelings for her, didn't it? Sleep now, Jason. When you wake up, we can go back to how things were. Just like before. We'll be there for each other, okay? Vivien whispered, her hand gently covering his eyes. Vivien, you're ruthless. And you're smart, Jason gritted out, his forehead beaded with sweat. His eyes were now filled with nothing but rage and alarm. He fought against the drug, but his consciousness was fading fast. With his last bit of strength, he quickly tapped the small chip behind his ear, sending out a series of location pings to Sprite just before he blacked out. At least he wouldn't lose contact with her. He'd find another chance to run. He was getting good at it, after all. And after this time, he was blocking Vivien's number for good. He fought for another moment, then finally collapsed into her arms. Vivien looked down at the man in her embrace, her red-rimmed eyes filled with a deep, possessive satisfaction. Jason, you're finally back with me. This time, she would never lose him again. She wasn't a fool like Clara, who would lock him up in the obvious Sterling estate for anyone to find. She would take him back, hide him away, in a place no one would ever find. That brainless peacock and that lovesick pregnant fool, they could search all they wanted. They would never find him. On the other side of the world, Sprite stood at the arrivals gate of an American airport, staring at the empty corridor. She was baffled. Weren't Clara and Brooke supposed to be on her tail? Wasn't she supposed to be intercepted? She had been staking out the gate for 2 hours, and there wasn't a ghost of a sign of them. By her calculations, they should have been here by now. This was not good. A sinking feeling told her they had figured something out. Just then her phone buzzed. She pulled it out, and her face fell. A text message glowed on the screen. Jason cornered. Julian Sue took him. Contact lost. Sprite, get back here ASAP. A series of question marks popped up over her head. Who? You're telling me Vivien took him? Why would Vivien suddenly kidnap Jason? From what she knew, Vivien wasn't that brand of crazy. Sprite, just get back here and track his location. We'll figure out the who later, the subordinate texted back. Sprite's jaw twitched. This was bad. This was turning into case file. The Miller Disappearance, Part 99. With a groan, she booked the first flight back to New York. In New York, Brooke Lynn sat in her car, her eyes glued to the airport security footage on her phone. She couldn't understand it. 1 minute he was there, the next he was gone. Did he dig a tunnel out of the place? Just then, one of her bodyguards took a call. A call from Miss Sterling's office. She said she has confirmation that Julian Sue is the one who took Mr. Miller. What? Brooke's eyes flared red. He left with Vivien? I don't believe it. I don't believe it. At the river, he had treated Vivien like she was invisible. He had said she was in his past. How could he leave with her? Clara's just trying to mess with me. Does she think I'm that stupid? She sneered, her eyes burning. The bodyguard looked uncomfortable. Miss Sterling said she knew you wouldn't believe her. She sent a video. What? Brooke snatched the phone from his hand. The video showed Jason, without any apparent struggle, walking calmly away with Vivien. A tidal wave of pure, unadulterated rage washed over her. Jason, she screamed, hurling the phone against the car window. It felt like her blood was flowing backward, her heart being devoured by a million tiny insects. How could he be so cruel? How could he just abandon her and Clara so easily? So all his promises were lies. She didn't want to believe it, but the proof was right there. Why would he go with Vivien after saying they were over? Give me Vivien's address. I want to see her now, she roared. She refused to believe Vivien could get away with this. Not in her city. Miss Sterling said she's already tracking her. She said you should just follow her lead, the bodyguard added. Brooke shot him a death glare. She never thought she'd see the day she would team up with Clara Sterling. But right now, she had no other choice. Still, she needed a backup plan. Clara, after sending the message to Brooke, rewatched the video of Jason and Vivien. Her eyes narrowed dangerously. Ma'am, the last sighting of the vehicle was on a road heading toward the city outskirts. We're on our way there now, Ava reported cautiously. Clara didn't speak, her face a mask of cold fury. He had run away again, and it really was Vivien. If Brooke had taken him, she wouldn't have been as worried. Brooke was reckless and predictable. But Vivien was smart. She had even switched cars and used fake plates along the way, slowing down their pursuit. She had no idea that at that very moment, Jason was being carried into the basement of a secluded villa in the Hudson Valley. NGH. Jason drifted in and out of consciousness. He felt the car stop, felt himself being lifted out by Vivien's bodyguards. The world grew darker and darker until it was just a sliver of light through his eyelids. He was inside now, being taken into a dark space. He didn't struggle. He pretended to still be unconscious, taking in his surroundings, the effects of the drug still lingering. Miss, should we put him here? One of the bodyguards asked, placing him on a soft bed. Yes. Vivien nodded, leaning over him. He felt her cool hand on his face for a moment before she pulled away. You can all leave. Yes, miss. The bodyguards left, leaving Jason and Vivien alone in the room. His head was still foggy and his body wouldn't move, so he kept his eyes slitted, pretending to be asleep as he surveyed the room. What he saw sent a chill straight to his bones. He was in a basement. The decor was simple, homey, with a slightly dated feel. It looked just like their old room at the children's home, but it had clearly been done in a hurry. The layout was unmistakably that of a basement. Even with the lights on, the room was dim. The only ventilation was a small transom window high on one wall. The cozy decor was a lie. A terrifying lie, because as his eyes scanned the room, he saw, sitting on a dresser, a pair of gleaming silver handcuffs, and an assortment of other intimidating-looking restraints. His throat tightened. The memory of his broken fingers ached. He didn't want to look anymore. Just then, a blurry female figure appeared, moving closer and closer. Jason, now it's finally just the two of us, Vivien murmured, her hand stroking his cheek as if he were a priceless, one-of-a-kind treasure. Her eyes were filled with an endless, possessive hunger, tempered by a thin veil of restraint. Jason listened in silence, a cold dread creeping up his spine. He had never seen this side of Vivien before. Her beautiful voice was laced with a chilling, pathological sickness, and this was her restrained. He couldn't even imagine what she was like unrestrained. In truth, Vivien was holding back with every fiber of her being. If she wasn't so terrified of scaring him away for good, the moment she saw Clara's pregnant belly, her inner demons would have been magnified 1,000 times over. But she was clinging to a sliver of hope. She believed that their 8 years together meant something, that he couldn't have just let it all go. His involvement with Clara had to have been an accident, so she would be patient. She would just keep him by her side. She believed that, slowly, they would find their way back to how they used to be. After watching him for a while, a glimmer of hope returned to her eyes. Jason, you rest now. I'm going to make you dinner. Okay, she said with a soft smile. Then, as he watched through his barely open eyes, she began to take off her jacket. The woman's skin, pale and almost translucent, glistened with a light sheen of sweat as she came into view. Jason's face flushed a deep, burning red. Was she really just changing clothes right in front of him? Seriously? Did she not even see him as a man? To be fair, Vivien had no idea he was awake. Completely oblivious, she picked up a thin, cream-colored skirt and slipped it on. Then, tying an apron around her waist, she turned and walked into the basement's small kitchen. Soon, the sound of sizzling from a skillet filled the air. Vivien seemed to be in an exceptionally good mood. Despite the cast on her leg, she hummed a light tune, moving around the kitchen on the ball of her good foot like a graceful, carefree butterfly. The apron cinched her slender waist, making her look delicate and fragile. The little song she hummed was hauntingly beautiful. If this were a normal house, Jason might have felt a sense of domestic warmth, the feeling of watching a devoted wife preparing a meal. But he was in a basement. The damp, cool air clung to his skin. Watching this woman, who had drugged and kidnapped him, now cheerfully humming as she cooked, filled him with a primal dread. Only a true psychopath could find this situation cozy. He was not a psychopath. So, as he watched Vivien, he began to struggle against the lingering effects of the sedative. The drug was finally starting to wear off. He could feel his fingers twitch, then move. The numbness receded, replaced by a dull ache. The air in the basement was thick and musty, and the steady drip. Drip! Drip of water came from somewhere outside the small ventilation window. Jason rubbed his temples, shaking his head to clear the fog. His eyelids felt like lead weights, and every muscle screamed in protest. Jesus Christ, he cursed internally. Did she overdose me? I think that was enough to take down an elephant. He didn't have time to complain. He scrambled to the small cabinet, grabbed the length of heavy silver chain, and shoved it deep under the bed. He could deal with everything else, but he was not getting put in that thing again. Jason? Are you awake? Vivien's voice called from the kitchen. She must have heard him move. He instantly dropped back onto the bed, feigning sleep. Still out. A sly look crossed Vivien's face. Seeing him apparently unconscious, she walked over to a set of shelves and picked up a small vial. Jason watched through slitted eyes as she returned to the kitchen and poured a spoonful of the vial's contents into the simmering pot of soup. A satisfied smile touched her lips as the liquid dissolved. One spoonful should be enough, right? She glanced over at him, hesitated, then added a second spoonful for good measure. When she'd asked her assistant to buy it, he'd said 1 spoonful was the standard dose for a 6-foot-tall man, but she was afraid it wouldn't be strong enough. She knew Jason. He was stubborn. If he didn't want to, he'd rather take care of himself than ever touch her. So, a little extra couldn't hurt. Faced with pure biological instinct, she didn't believe he could resist. Jason, you have to believe me. I don't want to do this, she murmured, her gaze softening as she looked at his sleeping form. Clara was almost 4 months pregnant. If she found him now, especially before Vivien could secure her own position, she would have no chance. She knew Jason's character. He would never let Clara's children grow up without a father. And she could never bring herself to harm a child. Jason would hate her for the rest of his life. This was the only way. Besides, she had always dreamed of having a child with him after they were married. This was just fast-tracking the plan. Listening to her muttering, a sense of deep foreboding washed over Jason. While she was absorbed in her cooking, he quietly got up and crept over to the shelves. He had to see what the hell she was brewing up for him. More drugs? Was it so hard for him to get a normal meal? He hadn't done anything to piss her off, had he? She wouldn't poison him, would she? Or was she just trying to knock him out again? He was already knocked out. He picked up a bottle identical to the one Vivien had used and squinted at the label. Stallion. Stimulant. Below the crude drawing of a muscular horse, the instructions read, 1 scoop floors a bull. 2 scoops makes him pull. For breeding purposes only. The world went dark for a second, and he almost choked. What? What the hell is this? He wanted to storm into the kitchen and demand an explanation. Was she seriously treating him like livestock? A bull could handle a scoop of this stuff, but could he? If he ate that, he'd be pitching a tent the size of a circus. Was she trying to kill him? Or herself? He was convinced she'd lost her mind. Unbeknownst to him, the bottle Vivien held, while identical in shape, had a different label. Hers read, Virility Elixir, a gentleman's helper for middle-aged moments. She, of course, saw no problem. She'd never even seen the other bottle. Meanwhile, the assistant guarding the villa's entrance let out a massive sneeze. Achoo! Hey, old man, did you clear out all that old feed from the basement? Yeah, it's all gone. Don't you worry. The groundskeeper replied dismissively. This part of the estate had originally been bought by Vivien to raise horses. The basement was used to store feed and veterinary medicines before being converted. The groundskeeper was pretty sure he'd cleared it all out. Well, maybe he'd left that old chain for tying up the cattle on a cabinet shelf, but Miss Vivien would never see it. The cleaning lady could toss it out later. He had no idea that his carelessness had led Jason to a terrifying misunderstanding. I'm screwed, Jason thought, his blood running cold. She was actually going to treat him like a stud horse. This was a catastrophic miscalculation. He had assumed Vivien was the normal one, but she was even crazier than Brooke and Clara. At least their methods were human. And Vivien had used 2 scoops? Jason gritted his teeth, glancing from the chain under the bed to the humming, oblivious woman in the kitchen. He quietly moved to the basement's air vent. He had to see the outside environment. He'd already taken in the layout of the basement, a simple 7,000 square foot space. A living area and 3 small rooms filled with junk, with only the main bedroom containing a proper bed. A basement this size had to be under a sizable villa. He needed a landmark, anything. But as he peered through the grate, past the whirring fan blades, a strange feeling crept over him. Though his view was obscured, the architecture outside, it was so familiar. Or had he seen it before? It wasn't just familiar. He knew this place. As Jason focused, his eyes widened in shock. This was the Hudson Valley, and based on the design of the neighboring house, this had to be near Dr. Chen's property. By some bizarre twist of fate, Vivien had brought him right to Hannah Chen's doorstep. He hadn't seen her since the wedding. If he could just get her attention, she might be his only way out of this. Jason, you're awake. Vivien's voice cut through his thoughts. Jason's neck went rigid. He turned slowly to see her standing there, holding a steaming pot of soup, a gentle smile on her face. But as her eyes followed his gaze to the air vent, a flicker of ice entered her expression. Jason, what are you looking at? Her voice was still soft, but it held an unsettling edge that made his skin crawl. Nothing. He turned away, a flash of guilt on his face that he quickly masked with cold anger. Why did you bring me here? I thought we were going back to the children's home. The smile returned to Vivien's face, as if nothing was wrong. Jason, the old home was relocated. Besides, Clara and Brooke would have known you were going there. It's not safe for you right now. This is my house. You can rest here, and I promise, no one will ever find you. Once things cool down, I'll take you wherever you want to go, okay? She spoke casually, placing the soup on the coffee table. Enough about that. You must be starving after everything today. Come and eat. I made your favorite fish soup. She beckoned to him, but Jason didn't move. No, thank you, Miss Sue. I appreciate the offer, but I need to leave. Please open the door. His tone was polite but distant, all traces of their earlier camaraderie in the car gone. Vivien's hand froze mid-air, trembling slightly. Jason, what's wrong with this place? Why are you so desperate to go back? Clara and Brooke are circling like vultures. Going back to the home is a death sentence. Her eyes reddened. Hearing him call her Miss Sue felt like a knife twisting in her gut. He'd never been so formal, so cold. She didn't understand. Why had everything changed? Why would he rather risk being captured by those two psychos than stay here with her? You're exaggerating, Miss Sue. Nana and the others at the home are my family. I have to go back to them, even if there's a risk, Jason said flatly as he walked toward the basement door. Of course, it wasn't just about Nana. Even without his ties to the home, there was no way in hell he was staying in a locked room with a woman who was clearly unhinged. It was like being drugged and thrown in a cellar. And when you try to escape, your captor asks with a wounded expression, "Why are you leaving?" The absurdity was staggering. But Vivien wasn't listening to his reasons. Seeing his determination to leave, a dangerous glint appeared in her eyes. Then I suggest you give up that idea right now. For miles around this place, every person you see works for me. We're in a remote area, and this basement is shielded. No GPS tracker will get a signal down here. No one can let you out, except for me. She delivered the lines with a calm, chilling finality. Jason's face darkened. Shielded? That meant Sprite couldn't get a lock on his position. Refusing to believe it, he strode to the door and yanked on the handle. He figured his strength could at least rattle it, but when he looked down, he saw a heavy padlock securing the door, blocking his path completely. Fury erupted inside him. Vivien, what the hell are you doing? He lost his patience. Not even Clara or Brooke had locked him in a basement. He truly regretted his choice. He thought Vivien was the only sane one of the three, but it turned out she was just as crazy as the rest. What's wrong? Not Miss Sue anymore. Vivien watched him rage, a faint, triumphant smile on her lips. Jason, don't be angry. I'm only doing this to protect you. What if Clara and Brooke tracked you here? This place has everything you need. As for the children's home, I'll have my people watch over it. I won't let those two women touch them. Isn't that better? She set down the soup bowl and glided toward him. Her slender figure, her delicate, heart-shaped face with its shimmering eyes, and her waist-length hair all created an image of ethereal beauty. A faint scent of jasmine trailed behind her. Every movement was dreamlike, perfect, but the raw, red veins in her eyes were impossible to ignore. As she drew closer, Jason held his breath. I don't need your protection. What you're doing is illegal. Let me go. He spoke through gritted teeth, flinching away as she reached out to touch his cheek. He wouldn't fall for that again. He was so paranoid, he didn't even want to breathe the air near her, afraid it was poisoned. Seeing him recoil, Vivien's expression finally turned to ice. Jason, please stop fighting me. You know you can't leave. Don't worry. Stay with me, and I'll keep you safe. I won't let anyone get near you. The only price is a little bit of your freedom. She retracted her hand and turned back to the soup. There. Now stop making a fuss and try my soup. She picked up the bowl, her voice once again gentle and coaxing. Jason stood frozen, staring daggers at her. When she approached with the bowl, his face fell. I'm not drinking it. Like I am. He hadn't missed her adding a little something extra to the recipe. Vivien's patience was wearing thin. Jason, I spent a long time making this for you. Are you sure you won't have any? Her eyes narrowed, a clear threat in her gaze. Jason's jaw tightened. He knew if he refused, she'd find another way. Fine, I'll drink it and spit it out later. Without a word, he took the bowl and forced a single, perfunctory sip. There, happy. Seeing him drink, Vivien's face lit up, her eyes burning with an eager, feverish anticipation. Good boy, she whispered, her voice a soft, satisfied purr as she stroked his chin like he was a pet. Then, to Jason's utter shock, she raised the bowl to her own lips and took a delicate sip. Itchem, not bad, Vivien said after a moment, giving her own cooking a nod of approval. She was completely oblivious to Jason's stunned expression. What? He thought, bewildered. She drank it too? Wait, that stuff probably doesn't work on women, right? He prayed it didn't, but his prayers went unanswered. A few minutes after Jason had discreetly spit his mouthful of soup into a nearby plant, Vivien began to show a reaction. Jason, is the air conditioning on too high in here? She asked, fanning her flushed face and pulling at the collar of her shirt. It never once crossed her mind that the soup was the problem. She had assumed the elixir was for male vitality and would have no effect on her. She'd only tasted it for flavor. Now, a wave of heat was rolling through her, so intense it made her nose feel warm. She regretted it instantly. If she'd known the dose was this potent, she would have stuck with one spoonful. The small, dimly lit room felt suffocating, the air thick with tension. Her gaze landed on Jason. Seeing his face, a face she hadn't been this close to in years, her eyes misted over. Jason, she murmured, taking a slow step toward him, her hand outstretched. She had missed him so much. During those years in Switzerland, not a day went by that she didn't think of him, of their time at the children's home. She dreamed of him at night, secretly sending people to check on his life, watching through photographs as he grew from a lanky teenager into the man he was today. But the Sue family was always watching, so she couldn't investigate too often, which had given Clara an opening. Now, the man she had yearned for was right in front of her, and the emotion she had suppressed for so long finally began to spill over. But Jason flinched away from her touch, as if he'd been electrocuted. Vivien, what are you doing? Her skin was burning hot. He could see a tidal wave of fire churning in her eyes, threatening to consume him whole. Panic seized him. Oh no, it's kicking in. In this sealed room, there was nowhere to run, and given Vivien's state, his chances of getting out unscathed were slim to none. He was terrified. That one night with Clara, a night he barely remembered, had resulted in twins. If something happened with Vivien, another set of twins? He'd have to check himself into a monastery. Vivien, calm down. Get a grip, he pleaded, backing away from her advance, desperately looking for something to put between them. As a last resort, maybe he could grab that chain from under the bed and tie her up with it. Jason, you smell so good. Vivien's eyes were half closed, her gaze hazy. Normally, she would never say something so forward, but the drug was blurring the lines of her inhibitions. Years of repressed feelings were bubbling to the surface. And he really did smell good. A faint, citrusy cologne that made her want to get closer to devour him. Even in his loose-fitting clothes, she could feel the raw, masculine energy radiating from him. Every detail was magnified. The sharp lines of his muscles, the veins standing out on the backs of his hand from years of physical work, the way his atoms apple-bobbed when he swallowed. It made her want to bite him. But he was as slippery as an eel, and she was getting annoyed. Jason, why are you running away? I'm not. Why would I be? He stammered, but she had already caught his hand. Your hands are so much bigger than mine, she said with a soft smile. Jason felt a bizarre sense of role reversal. Wasn't that supposed to be the guy's line? Ahem. Vivien, I think I'm a little hungry. Can I eat first? Maybe you should. Go take a shower. He quickly grabbed the bowl of soup and used it as a shield, shoveling food into his mouth without swallowing a single bite. You're hungry? You weren't hungry a minute ago, she said, slightly annoyed. He wouldn't eat a bite when she offered, but now he was starving. Yes. I'm starving. I could die. I have to eat something right now. You go take a shower, please. He nodded so vigorously his head bobbed. Fine. Vivien relented. He was in her basement. It wasn't like he could escape. And letting him eat some more soup would only help things along. She wouldn't have to work so hard later. The thought made her flush with anticipation. I'll go shower first. You eat. I'm covered in grease from cooking. She finally gave in, heading for the bathroom. She had a touch of OCD, and feeling sticky and grimy was unbearable. Besides, she'd been traveling all day. A nice, hot shower was in order. Make sure you eat a lot, she added, one last instruction. You got it. Jason nodded eagerly. The moment she disappeared into the bathroom, he spat out the food and started trying to make himself throw up. Eat? Hell no. That stuff could probably give a horse a heart attack. If he ate it, he'd turn into Optimus Prime. And with that kind of potency, the chances of hitting the jackpot were probably even higher. The thought of a flock of children chasing him around, screaming "Daddy," made his blood run cold. He frantically started searching the basement again, looking for any spot where a signal might get through. Meanwhile, at the Chun residence next door, Dr. Hannah Chin finally emerged from her research lab, exhausted. She glanced at her phone. The message thread with Jason was empty. A familiar loneliness settled over her. Tell the family the problem is solved, she said, shrugging off her white lab coat and tossing it to her housekeeper. And tell them to stop bothering me. Someone had sabotaged a major project at the family's firm. The elders, knowing her expertise, had used every form of emotional blackmail in the book to force her to come back and fix it. They'd even started meddling in her contractual marriage to Wesley Chun, keeping her so busy she hadn't been able to see Jason. They had even hidden the news of his fake death from her. She wondered how he was doing now. As if on cue, a notification popped up on Hannah's phone. It was from the private investigator she'd hired to keep an eye on Clara and Jason. Professor Chun, Jason Miller, tried to escape from a private airport. He was taken by an unknown woman. Miss Sterling is turning the city upside down looking for him. An unknown woman? Hannah's expression hardened. Do you know who she is? Details are thin. We only know that she's Julian Sue, the second daughter of the Sue family. The second daughter? The Sue family? Hannah knew their name. They were a powerhouse in Switzerland, on par with the Sterlings. What was Jason doing mixed up with them? Get the car ready, she commanded. I'm going to see Clara. She needed answers, and Clara was the only one who might have them. She had to find out where this Julian Sue had taken Jason. The housekeeper shifted uncomfortably. Professor, Mr. Chin took your car. He what? He said a woman like you has no need for such a nice car. So he just drove off with it. What? Fury flashed in Hannah's eyes. That bastard. Her family wasn't as wealthy as the Sterlings or the Lynns. While her research projects had earned her a small fortune, she wasn't interested in cars and only owned one. Now that idiot Wesley had taken it. How was she supposed to get anywhere? They were deep in the Hudson Valley. Catching a cab was next to impossible. Professor, a new neighbor just moved in next door, the housekeeper suggested quickly. A young woman. I saw she has several cars. Perhaps you could borrow one? If you're in a hurry. I'm sure she wouldn't mind if you offer to pay. That's an idea, Hannah conceded. If the woman wouldn't lend it to her, she could just buy the car off her. Fine, let's go. She threw on a jacket and headed for the villa next door. In that very villa, Jason sat on the basement sofa, the sound of the running shower grating on his nerves. He glanced at the soup on the table. Afraid Vivien would notice he hadn't eaten it, he quickly carried the bowl into the kitchen and poured it down the drain. Just as he turned to leave the kitchen, Vivien emerged from the bathroom. She had washed off her makeup. Her beautiful face was flushed, and droplets of water clung to her hair, trickling down her neck. Her almond-shaped eyes, dark and alluring, were fixed on him. She was wrapped only in a white bathrobe, loosely tied, revealing a pair of long, pale legs that seemed to go on for days. Any other man, in any other situation, would have felt his heart pound. Jason was no exception. His pulse quickened, but he forced it down. It was a normal biological reaction, but control was a basic requirement for a married man. Vivien, however, didn't care about his control. Jason, what are you doing in there? She asked, her eyes narrowing as she glided toward him. Nothing, he said quickly. I saw you in the shower, so I thought I'd do the dishes. A flicker of surprise crossed her face. Really? Was he that thoughtful? Had he had a change of heart? Did you finish the soup? Her eyes lit up. Jason nodded. Finished it. Of course I finished it. Her gaze intensified. Then, see me now. Don't you feel anything? The drug should have kicked him by now. She'd only had a tiny sip and already felt overwhelmed. How could he feel nothing? Feel what? Jason's mouth went dry. Before he could react, she was pressing in, her body close. A man and a woman, all alone. What do you think you should be feeling? She whispered, her voice husky. Jason, we've known each other for so long. You can't lie to me. That soup. Did you drink it, or did you pour it out? Her soft, fragrant body was nearly against his, her crimson lips parting as she spoke, moving closer and closer. Her hand rested lightly on his chest, a deliberate, teasing touch. A hint of suspicion laced her words. Jason couldn't believe it. She hadn't even seen him do it, but she knew. He suddenly wished he'd just gone with Brooklyn. He should have never gotten out of her car. Faced with her accusation, he panicked. You're accusing me? He decided to use her own tactics against her. "Vivien, I trusted you enough to come with you," he pressed on. "And you not only lock me in a basement, but you accuse me of lying? After all these years, is this all the trust we have?" Vivien's eye twitched. "But I saw you go into the kitchen, and the soup wasn't finished when you went in." "Crap, she saw me? How? Wasn't she in the shower?" "Okay, look," Jason said, a feeling of pure absurdity washing over him. Setting aside the facts for a second, the real issue here is the lack of trust. I put my faith in you, and this is how you treat me. Even he thought that sounded insane. Could you really just set aside the facts? But it worked. "All right, Jason. You're right, it's my fault," she conceded, the anger in her eyes softening. Hearing him say he trusted her was enough to soothe her. "Let's go to the bedroom, then." The word bedroom made his stomach clench. Let me take a shower first." "You go on ahead. I'll be right there. You need a shower too?" Vivien was growing impatient, but she eventually agreed. "Fine. Go ahead. I'll be waiting for you in the room, Jason." Her eyes lingered on him for a moment before she reluctantly disappeared into the bedroom. She had a new nightgown she wanted him to see. He would love it. Plus, she wasn't convinced he had actually drunk the soup. It seemed she would have to take some extra precautions. Her gaze drifted to the scented oil diffuser in the corner of the room. Jason rushed into the bathroom and immediately started searching for an escape route. A basement bathroom had to have ventilation, but the vent was tiny, barely big enough for a child. There was no way he could fit through it. "Am I really going to die in here?" he thought, sweat beading on his forehead. Besides a hole in the toilet, there was no other way out. To keep Vivien from getting suspicious, he turned on the shower, letting the water run while his mind raced. He stood under the spray until his skin was pruned and Vivien's voice called from outside. "Jason, are you done yet?" "Almost." He knew he couldn't stall any longer. Wrapping a towel around his waist, he stepped out. Through the half-open bedroom door, he saw her, draped in a sheer white nightgown, leaning against the headboard. Her face was flushed, and her eyes burned with a heat that made his throat tighten. "Ahem, I'm just going to get a glass of water." He forced himself to sound casual, walking to the small kitchen area and scanning his surroundings. Finally, on the same shelf where she'd gotten the vial, he saw a familiar box. The kind they hang on the counter at every convenience store. Condoms. It was that or nothing. There was no other way out. Jason swallowed hard. He glanced toward the bedroom where Vivien was waiting, his mind racing. Was this really his only option? "Jason, aren't you coming in?" Her impatient voice echoed from the room again. He made a decision. Steeling himself, he discreetly slipped the box of condoms into the pocket of his bathrobe. If it came down to it, this was his only defense. He absolutely could not have another kid. Clara's were more than enough. "Coming," he called out. He turned to go into the room, but stopped short. Vivien was standing in the doorway, her arms crossed, studying him with an unnerving intensity. "What are you looking for, Jason?" Her voice was a low, melodic purr, but her scarlet-tinged eyes were cold. A chill ran down his spine. "Nothing. Let's just go to bed." He tried to brush past her, but she grabbed his arm. "What's the rush?" she murmured, a faint smile playing on her lips. She lifted her face to his and opened her arms. "Carry me." Jason froze. Why does that line sound so familiar? Do all women have a thing for being carried? He vaguely remembered reading something by a psychologist who claimed that physical embraces fostered intimacy and that a man's strong arms provided a sense of security. It was supposedly a great move for guys trying to break the ice with a girl they liked. But Jason had absolutely no desire to foster intimacy with this particular psycho. Still, he knew arguing was pointless. Reluctantly, he slipped his arms under her, one behind her back and the other beneath her knees, and lifted her slender frame. Vivien blushed, burying her face in the crook of his neck. "Jason, it's been so long since you held me like this," she whispered, her warm breath tickling his skin. Her voice was husky with emotion. Her eyes were red, as if she was fighting back tears. She remembered a time, back at the home, when his world had revolved around her. But now, "Jason, why did it have to turn out like this?" she asked, her voice thick with pain. The manipulation, the suspicion, this wasn't them. This wasn't who they were supposed to be. She could still feel it, couldn't she? He still had feelings for her. "You're overthinking it," he said flatly. He didn't want to have this conversation again. It was pointless. He walked into the bedroom and gently, almost clinically, placed her on the large, soft bed. His lack of a real answer made her eyes well up. She clung to his neck, refusing to let go, refusing to be put down. Her warm lips brushed against his earlobe. "It's okay," she thought. "Even if we can't go back, it's okay. I'll make him fall in love with me again." Tears streamed down her face as her fingers traced the line of his jaw. "Jason, you used to call me your wife." Can't we be like we were before? Please? Just say it once. Her voice was a hypnotic whisper, her gaze hazy and alluring. He was pulled off balance, tumbling onto the bed with her. In the dim, heavy air of the room, their breathing grew loud and ragged. Jason's throat was dry. Vivien, don't. He couldn't say it. The word wife, which he had once resented, now belonged to someone else. He had been forced to call Clara his wife, but at least he could say it. With Vivien, the word was stuck in his throat. No. Seeing his resistance, a stubborn, desperate light filled her eyes. Jason, you married Clara. You had children with her. Why? Why wouldn't you even say my name now? Her voice broke, a sob catching in her throat. Jason's expression softened. In the faint light, her moon-pale face, streaked with tears, looked heartbreakingly fragile. The scent of jasmine from the diffuser filled the room, and her soft, pink lips were slightly parted. Every breath she took felt like a weight on his chest. For a dizzying moment, he saw the Vivien of his youth, the gentle, pure-hearted girl whose tears he could never bear to see. A protective instinct, long dormant, stirred within him. He felt as if no time had passed at all, as if the chasm between them had never opened. She was still the girl he had dreamed of for years. Okay, don't cry, he found himself saying, the words an echo of a time long past. You're not pretty when you cry. He didn't notice the flicker of triumph in her eyes. Jason, she sobbed softly. Jason, please don't leave me. Though the tears were a performance, the words were from her soul. We grew up together. I don't have any parents. If you abandon me too, what's the point of living? He and the director were the only family she had ever known. That was why her feelings for him had warped into something so extreme. She couldn't lose him. It would kill her. Her words twisted his heart into a knot. He couldn't bring himself to reject her outright. But the fact remained, by marrying Clara, he had missed his chance with Vivien. Could they really go back now? His mind was a blur, but his body was on fire. A strange heat was spreading through him. Jason finally realized what was wrong. The scent in the room. Before the thought could fully form, her soft lips were on his, silencing everything. After 18 years of restraint, faced with the woman who had once been his everything, her gentle assault was too much. In that instant, all of Jason's defenses crumbled. Jason, kiss me, she whispered against his mouth, her arms tightening around him. I've missed you so much. He could no longer fight it. He wrapped his arms around her, returning the kiss with a desperate hunger he hadn't known he possessed. Jason, Vivien felt his response, and a cunning glint flashed at her eyes. She knew he was wary of her. He probably hadn't touched the soup, but the scented oil in the diffuser, that he couldn't have avoided. Besides, she was certain he still had feelings for her. Once she was pregnant with a child, he would come back to her. It was only a matter of time. But just as they were about to cross the final line, a sharp pain shot through Jason's chest, clearing his head like a splash of ice water. No, he gasped, his consciousness returning with a jolt. Vivien, we can't do this. He pulled back abruptly, his voice ragged. Shit, how had he lost control so completely? He hadn't drunk the soup, he was sure of it. What the hell was happening? Jason, don't go. Why? Why not? Vivien felt a hollow emptiness as he pulled away. You could with Clara. Why can't you with me? Overwhelmed, she reached out to pull him back. Her hand snagged on his bathrobe. The robe, already loosened from their struggle, fell open. A small, square packet dropped from the pocket and landed on the bed between them. The air went still. Vivien froze, her eyes, and Jason's, fixed on the small object. Jason's pupils constricted. He lunged for it, but Vivien was faster. She snatched it up and stared at the label. Rose watermelon flavor. Vivien's face flushed a furious, blotchy red. Where did you get this? He was carrying condoms? Was he deliberately trying to avoid having a child with her? Or had he been carrying them this whole time? And rose watermelon? Rose. Vivien instantly thought of the rose-scented perfume Clara always wore. A white-hot rage surged through her. Was this a leftover from him and Clara? Jason, she shrieked, her eyes turning crimson. This is bad, he thought. Clutching his robe, he took a step back, his free hand fumbling for the chain under the bed. Vivien advanced on him, her red lips twisting into a cruel smile. Jason, you have disappointed me so much. I'm going to give you one last chance. Throw this in the trash, get back in bed, and be a good boy. Okay. Her voice was dangerously soft, a threat wrapped in silk. Jason narrowed his eyes. Sorry, I'm an adult, not child. I know how to control myself, and I don't need you to take care of me. He turned to leave. Jason, Vivien roared. Get back here. She lunged for him. This was the opening he needed. In one swift motion, he pulled the chain from under the bed. Before she could react, he snapped one cuff around her wrist and the other around the metal bedpost. "What are you doing?" Vivien stared in disbelief. "Where'd he get handcuffs? What was he planning?" "Nothing," Jason said, fighting the fire coursing through his veins. "Just asking you to wait here for a bit, Miss Sue. Your men will find you and let you out after I'm gone." He knew something was wrong. He never lost control like that. The feeling was too familiar. Vivien must have used something else on him. He had to get out now. "Miss Sue, thank you for getting me away from Clara and Brooke. But I won't be staying." He looked at the woman chained to the bed and turned to leave. Vivien panicked. Jason, don't go, please. It's dangerous out there." "I'm protecting you," she cried, her eyes wide and pleading. She twisted her wrist violently, ignoring the pain as the metal cut into her skin, trying to break free. Her other hand desperately clung to his arm. Seeing the cold indifference in his eyes, her heart shattered. She couldn't let him leave. She had worked too hard to get him back. "Vivien, I can't believe you're just like them. Just like Clara and Brooke. I don't need any of you to protect me." His anger finally boiled over. "You brought me here, locked me up like this, all to satisfy your own twisted needs." Even her heartbreakingly fragile expression didn't move him anymore. He was done. For the first time, as she begged and pleaded, he hardened his heart and pried her fingers from his arm, one by one. "Let go, Vivien," he said coldly. "We can't go back to the way things were." He pulled the key from her pocket without hesitation and walked out of the bedroom. Jason, come back," her cries followed him. He was already out in the main living area of the basement. He left her there, tears streaming down her face as her expression twisted from despair to a cold, murderous rage. "Get in here now," she screamed into her phone at her assistant. She gritted her teeth, ignored the searing pain, and dislocated her thumb, wrenching her hand free from the cuff. Her eyes, fixed on the direction Jason had gone, burned with a bloodthirsty light. He was really that cruel. He felt nothing for her. She regretted it all. She shouldn't have given him so much freedom. She should have chained him in the basement from the very beginning. Upstairs, just as Jason had expected, he was in a villa, but every window was boarded up and the front door had a keypad lock. The key he'd taken was only for the basement. There was no way out. "Sprite, can you hear me?" he muttered, frantically pressing the chip behind his ear, trying to send his location and establish contact. All he heard was static. Damn it, a curse escaped his lips. His heart hammered against his ribs. He was searching for another exit when he heard heavy footsteps coming from the basement. Thump, thump, thump. Each step sounded like it was landing directly on his heart. "Jason, you made me so very sad," a ghostly voice whispered from the stairwell. Jason's face paled, his breath catching in his throat. Before he could speak, the doorbell rang. The small screen on the intercom lit up, showing the face of a woman he knew all too well. "Hannah, Chun." She stood on the doorstep, her expression calm and professional. "Hello. Is anyone home?" she asked politely. "I'm your neighbor from next door. I was hoping I might be able to borrow your car. I have an urgent matter to attend to. I'm happy to pay for your trouble or even purchase the vehicle from you at a high price." "Miss," Hannah Chun said again, her voice patient. Jason's eyes lit up with desperate hope. Professor Chun, can you hear me?" Finally, a normal person. He tried to speak into the intercom, but the screen remained silent on her end. "Is no one home?" she wondered aloud. The housekeeper was sure someone was here. Seeing no response, she turned to leave. Jason's heart sank. He couldn't let her go. The intercom was one way. He had to make some noise. He grabbed a wooden chair, smashed it against the floor, and, wielding one of its legs, began hammering it against the locked front door. Bang, bang, bang. The explosive sound stopped Hannah in her tracks. "What was that?" she murmured, a strange unease settling over her. On instinct, she turned back and pressed the doorbell again. "Miss, I can hear things breaking inside your house. If you don't open the door, I'm going to call the police," she announced, her voice firm. "Yes, call them." Jason thought, his relief palpable. "There's a psycho in here. A bona fide Yandera." Just then, Vivien appeared at the top of the basement stairs. She was holding a cold, black handgun, her injured hand cradled against her body. She saw the interior door to the basement, which Jason had locked behind him. With a cold smile, she raised the gun and fired. Boom! The lock shattered, and the door swung open. Vivien stepped slowly into the living room. "Jason, who are you calling for?" she asked, her voice a chilling whisper. Jason's pupils contracted. He turned to see her standing there, gun in hand. "Vivien, what the hell do you think you're doing?" he demanded, instinctively moving to block the intercom screen for review. He had to keep her from seeing Hannah. But nothing escaped Vivien's sharp eyes. "Jason, you're not behaving," she chided softly. She walked around him, her gaze falling on Hannah's face on the screen. Vivien's eyes went cold. She gestured to a few of her bodyguards who had emerged from another room. Take a back downstairs. She would deal with this little problem outside, then come back for him. Yes, ma'am. The guards moved forward, but Jason didn't budge. Just then, Sprite's voice crackled to life through his chip. Jason, I just got back from Switzerland. I got your location ping. Our team is on the way. I've already secured the children's home. What are your orders? Sprite's voice was a lifeline. But looking at Vivien, his own fury finally consumed him. Give me a car and a gun, he ordered, his voice dangerously low. Don't ask any questions. He was done playing games with these 3 crazy women. He was done running. Before, he had worried about Nana and the others getting caught in the crossfire. He worried about G-Corp, the company he'd built with kids from the home, people who had nowhere else to go. He didn't want his personal chaos to bring the wrath of the Sterlings and the Lins down on them. He didn't want his employees, people who had stood by him from the beginning, to lose their jobs. And a part of him still had some lingering affection for Clara, Brooke, and Vivien. But now he was done. If they wanted to die, he would die with them. Understood, Sprite replied, recognizing the raw fury in his tone. He had to be truly pushed to the edge. After Jason was dragged away, Vivien opened the front door. Hannah, who had been about to call the police, was momentarily stunned by the breathtakingly beautiful woman who stood before her. She never expected to see someone so striking in this remote corner of the Hudson Valley. Her eyes darted past Vivien into the living room. It was a wreck. Furniture was overturned, and a shattered chair lay in pieces on the floor. It looked like a war zone. Vivien noticed her gaze and stepped sideways, blocking the view. Can I help you? She asked, her voice like ice. Hannah's attention returned to her. Vivien was wearing a loose bathrobe, revealing glimpses of pale skin. Her leg was in a cast, and her hand was red and swollen. Though she possessed a gentle, ethereal beauty, her cold demeanor was jarring. Miss, what was going on in here? The noise was intense. Hannah probed, unable to shake her suspicion. Fresh from her lab, Hannah was still wearing her black-framed glasses, her hair slightly disheveled, but her own beauty was undeniable. Vivien sized her up, her guard rising. My boyfriend and I were just playing a game, Vivien said dismissively, her tone making it clear it was none of Hannah's business. A lover's quarrel. Hannah's face flushed. Right. Well, you're being quite loud. It's a bit disruptive to the neighbors. A game? What kind of game were they playing? It sounded like they were demolishing the house. She felt so out of touch. Thank you for the tip. We'll be more careful. If there's nothing else, you can go now, Vivien said, starting to close the door. Wait. Hannah quickly put her hand on the doorframe. Vivien's eyes narrowed dangerously. Does she know something? But Hannah just said, your car? Can I still borrow it? I have somewhere I need to be urgently. Borrow the car? Vivien visibly relaxed. She waved a hand at a bodyguard. Give her the keys. With that, she turned and disappeared back into the house, heading for the basement. Hannah took the keys, but the feeling of unease lingered. Something was very wrong here. She got into the car and sent a text to her investigator. Give me the name of the owner of this villa. She was about to drive off to find Clara when her phone buzzed with a message from Clara herself. Professor Chun, are you home? I'm on my way over. I need to talk to you. Hannah frowned. Why was Clara suddenly coming to see her? Meanwhile, Clara was in the back of a car, racing toward the Hudson Valley. Are you sure this is where Vivien's car was headed? She asked, her voice dangerously calm. Yes, ma'am, her bodyguard confirmed. Vivien switched vehicles and stuck to roads without surveillance, but we found a trail. All routes out of the city are being watched. She can't escape. Her last known location was in this vicinity. Clara's gaze turned to steel. Good. Take me there. Some lines I feel are meant to be crossed. She didn't know why, but a cold premonition told her something was waiting for her at that villa. She had to see it for herself. Back in the basement, Jason was chained to the headboard, his hand secured above his head. He stared at the wall, his face a cold, silent mask. The only sound was the faint drip of water. Then, he heard Vivien's footsteps. The door creaked open. Her silhouette appeared in the doorway, a dark figure against the light. She glided into the room, her beautiful face shrouded in shadows. Jason, you have disappointed me so much, she whispered, stopping at the foot of the bed. She had thought he believed her, trusted her, but it was all a lie. In his eyes, she was no different from Clara and Brooke. No different from the other 2 psychos. You've disappointed me, too, Jason shot back, his voice devoid of warmth. He was done with the charade. You told me you were forced to leave me all those years ago, and I believed you. But this? Dragging me here, drugging me. Was that also something you were forced to do? He was so tired of it all. A wounded look flickered across Vivien's face. Jason, if I didn't do this, would you have stayed with me? You said you believed me, so why? Why can't we go back to the way things were? Her eyes were red, filled with a desperate, stubborn plea. Her cool fingers reached out, caressing his cheek. Her expression was a twisted mix of adoration and a terrifying, pathological madness. Jason, I really didn't want it to be like this. Can't we just be together? Why? Why do you always have to think about running away from me? She had tried so hard. She had even decorated this place to look like their old room at the children's home. All she wanted was for things to be like they were before. Was that so wrong? You're insane, he said coldly. The word seemed to strike a nerve. Insane. A dark, chilling laugh escaped her lips. Fine. If you think I'm insane, then let's be insane. Her eyes went dead. To Jason's horror, she turned, walked back to the kitchen, and returned with a bowl of the fish soup. Jason, you were a very bad boy earlier. I saw you. You didn't drink a single drop of this soup, she cooed, her smile making his blood run cold. That won't do. Here, be good. Have a taste. Before he could react, she grabbed his jaw, her grip like steel. She tried to pour the soup into his mouth, but he clamped his jaw shut. Her eyes narrowed. Jason, if you don't drink this, do you want me to feed it to you with my own mouth? His eyes widened in shock, and in that split second of hesitation, she forced his mouth open. The acrid taste of the soup flooded his throat. Cough, cough. He choked violently, his face turning purple as he gasped for air. He could feel the liquid go down. No matter how much he coughed, he couldn't get it back up. Pure rage consumed him, his voice a low, threatening growl. Vivien, you fucking psycho. She only smiled, a stunningly beautiful, terrifyingly empty smile. Jason, you can call me whatever you want, as long as it makes you happy. But I don't believe, after drinking this, that you'll be able to resist. She no longer cared if he thought she was a monster. All she wanted was a child that belonged to both of them. She wanted the first time, the one she had saved for 20 years, to be with him and him alone. As the drug entered his system, a ball of fire ignited in his stomach. It was far more potent than anything Clara or Brooke had ever used. You, Vivien, you didn't have to use the kind meant for animals, did you? Do you really think that little of me? He rasped, his throat closing up. You know that stuff can kill a person. That was the other reason he hadn't wanted to drink it. He was genuinely afraid it would give him a heart attack. Vivien glanced toward the kitchen, not understanding what he meant, but seeing him struggle, writhing in agony, yet still refusing to touch her, her own eyes reddened. Jason, do you hate me that much? Look at me. You could do it with Clara. Why? Why not with me? Her anger flared. She grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her, her voice turning ragged and sick. Or is it because you've fallen in love with Clara? You're a lunatic, he yelled. But as he looked at her, the drug took hold. His head swam, his vision blurred. Her soft voice, her crimson lips, all of it magnified and distorted. His breathing grew heavy, ragged. Her cool hand on his face felt like the only relief in a sweltering inferno, and he found himself leaning in her touch, wanting more. A part of him, deep down, no longer fought it. Jason, have you fallen for someone else? Tell me. She kept murmuring, her voice a relentless whisper. Get away from me, he roared, the sound startling her. Her eyes instantly filled with red-hot fury. Jason, stop fighting yourself. You want this, don't you? She hissed. Her hand slid from his cheek to the back of his neck, and before he could react, she sank her teeth into the sensitive skin there. It was like a switch flipped deep inside him. The dam of his control shattered, and a flood of raw, primal emotion washed everything away. Vivien, you asked for this, he snarled, his voice a terrifying rasp as he slammed her against the wall. A tidal wave of heat crashed over them. She wrapped her arms around him, a single, triumphant tear rolling down her cheek. An hour later, Vivien had been transformed from a girl into a woman. Meanwhile, in the villa next door, Hannah Chun sat in her living room, her face burning with embarrassment. The villas, though detached, shared a wall. The rhythmic, violent shaking of a headboard against that wall was impossible to ignore. Don't these young people have any self-control? She thought, mortified. And that noise. The soundproofing in these houses was supposed to be excellent, but it was no match for the racket next door. Were they trying to break the bed? It had been going on for nearly an hour. Was it even possible for it to last that long? She'd been married to Wesley by contract and had never liked him enough to let him near her, so she was completely inexperienced in these matters. But still, an hour? It sounded unbelievable. She wondered, was Jason like that? The thought of Jason, of the way his muscles had looked when he'd showered at her house, made her blush again. What am I thinking? He was her student. But Given his physique, she had a feeling he could probably make even more noise than the neighbors. Hannah fidgeted, a strange, restless feeling creeping over her as the sound from next door continued unabated. She couldn't take it anymore. "Can you find me some earplugs?" she asked her housekeeper, her voice strained. Of course. Just as the housekeeper turned to fetch them, the doorbell rang. "Professor Chun, are you home?" Clara Sterling's cool voice came from the intercom. Hannah, who had been beet red with embarrassment, immediately stood up. "Never mind the earplugs." She walked to the door and opened it. "Miss Sterling." Clara stood on the doorstep, her expression as cold as ever. "Miss Sterling, please come in." "I've been waiting for you," Hannah said, stepping aside. She hadn't driven out to find Clara because Clara had said she was on her way. It had taken her a while to get here, though. "I drove from the city," Clara explained, her eyes sweeping the room as she entered. She was suspicious. Vivien's last known location was near here. Could she and Hannah be working together? But they didn't even know each other. "Miss Sterling, if you have something to say, please be direct," Hannah said, seeing Clara's searching gaze. "And I have a question for you as well." "Go ahead," Clara replied curtly. Hannah led her into the living room and didn't beat around the bush. "Miss Sterling, this may be forward, but Jason is my student. I need to know where he's been taken." Her expression was serious, her eyes sharp. In her mind, Jason was still the innocent, naive young man she had first met. He was a good kid who needed protecting, especially after that love letter. Clara's eyes narrowed, a dangerous glint in them. "You don't know?" She studied Hannah's face, searching for any hint of deception. "Jason's whereabouts?" She was asking her. If Clara knew, she wouldn't be here. "How would I know?" Hannah asked, baffled. She had no part in this drama. It was always between Brooklyn and Clara. And Clara was legally Jason's wife, a fact Hannah hated to admit. If even she didn't know, how could Hannah? She had just spent the last hour listening to a headboard banging against her wall. Clara frowned. Hannah seemed to be telling the truth. "If you don't know, then I won't disturb you further." She turned to leave, but hesitated and pulled out her phone. "Have you seen this girl?" She was about to hand the phone over when the housekeeper appeared again. "Professor, a Miss Lynn is here to see you." Hannah and Clara both frowned. Just then, Brooklyn burst through the front door, looking frantic and wild. "Clara, did you find him? Where is he? Where is Jason?" Brooke's forehead was beaded with sweat, her usually perfect face streaked with dirt. She scanned the room desperately. The wound on her neck hadn't fully healed, making her voice a raw, hoarse cry. She looked like an abandoned child, her eyes a storm of anger, helplessness, and fear. Clara and Hannah watched her in stunned silence. Brooke searched the entire villa, upstairs and down. Finding no trace of Jason, she became hysterical. "Clara, I'm begging you, just tell me where he is." The proud, arrogant Brooke Lynn bowed her head, tears streaming down her face. All she wanted was to know where Jason was. She couldn't live without him. She would give up everything else. Clara's expression was complicated. "I haven't found him either." Brooke didn't believe her. How was that possible? With the Sterling family's resources, how could that Vivien woman have gotten him out from under your nose? "Clara, you're hiding him, aren't you? Give him back to me. Please, just give him back to me," she screamed, her voice breaking, fresh tears spilling from her swollen eyes. Clara's face hardened. "Brooke, have you had enough? If you hadn't interfered, Vivien never would have gotten to him in the first place." "What do you mean I interfered?" Brooke shot back, defiant. "He wanted to leave with me. You're the one who trapped him with those kids." She had seen it clearly. If it weren't for the pregnancy, she was sure Jason would have nothing to do with Clara. The barb hit its mark. Clara's face went rigid. She knew it was true. Without the children, she wasn't sure Jason would have ever returned to her. And watching him save Brooke on the beach without a second thought. Without the children, he probably would have chosen Brooke. She had no defense, but she would never admit defeat. Hannah, watching them, was completely lost. What children? Who is Vivien? She had only been in her lab for a short while, but it felt like she had missed an entire season of a drama. And Vivien? She suddenly remembered the strange, smashing sounds from next door and a new neighbor whose last name was Sue. Something clicked in her mind. "Clara, you said Jason was taken by someone named Vivien?" she asked, a sudden urgency in her voice. The investigator had mentioned a name, but she hadn't been paying close attention. Now it all felt terribly wrong. "Yes," Clara confirmed. Hannah stepped forward. "Do you have a picture of her?" "Let me see." "I have one," Clara said, remembering she had been about to show Hannah the photo. She handed over her phone. Brooke watched impatiently, scoffing to herself. There was no way Hannah-chan could have seen Vivien. This was the middle of nowhere. Even if Vivien passed through, she wouldn't have stayed. This little villa wasn't nearly grand enough for her tastes. It wasn't the underground castle Brooke had built. But when Hannah looked at the photo, her face went pale. The girl in the picture was smiling, her face youthful and innocent. She wore a simple white dress, looking pure and clean. But her facial features, they were identical to the woman she had just seen in the villa next door. Now that she was looking closely, she also saw the faint resemblance to Brooke. Their makeup styles were completely different. Brooke's was bold and defiant, while Vivien's was soft and ethereal, which was why she hadn't noticed it before. But now, seeing them together, she felt like a complete idiot for not realizing it sooner. You're saying this is the woman who took Jason? She asked, her voice trembling with disbelief. Clara's brow furrowed. She could tell something was wrong. You've seen her? Brooke rolled her eyes. What's the big deal, Professor? So, she looks a little like me. Who looks like whom is the real question, she thought. But Hannah was staring at the photo, her mind replaying the sound of the headboard banging against the wall, the sound of the chair being smashed. And in a horrifying flash of insight, she understood. The woman in this photo. She's in the villa right next door, she said, her voice shaking with a mixture of shame and rage. And the crashing I heard earlier. That must have been Jason. The more embarrassed she had been by the noise, the more furious she was now. That sound, it could only have been one thing. Jason and that woman. They were. Did I fail to hear his call for help in time? Overwhelming regret washed over her, and her nails dug into her palms. Clara stared at her, stunned. What did you say? Vivien is next door, she and Brooke exclaimed in unison. They locked eyes for a split second, then, without another word, bolted for the door. Just as they rushed outside, a deafening crash echoed through the quiet street. Two cars had collided head-on, thick smoke billowing from the wreckage. Clara and Brooke stopped in their tracks, staring in shock, momentarily forgetting their mission. The cause of the crash had been set in motion an hour earlier. After their hour-long battle, Jason had fallen into a heavy, drugged sleep. Vivien lay curled against him, her head resting on his chest, a look of pure contentment on her face. Her beautiful skin was flushed and beaded with sweat, adding to her delicate post-coital glow. It had been so long since she had been this close to him. It had been through force, yes, but the joy she felt was indescribable. This was her first time with anyone. Her body ached, especially her lower back, but from this day forward, she belonged completely to him. And he had to belong completely to her. She looked at the sleeping man beside her, at the faint crimson stain on the white sheets, and reached out to trace the lines of his face. Her fingers lingered on the bridge of his nose, mapping his features, a deep sense of satisfaction warming her. Jason, we're finally together, she whispered, her voice thick with a sick, possessive desire. From now on, we are inseparable. I am yours, and you are mine. Okay. She snuggled closer, her hand slipping under the covers. She didn't notice his eyelashes flutter. Jason, I think we were too late. Sprite's voice came through the chip, tinged with a strange mix of sadness and disappointment. She had heard everything. Her eyes were red. He had promised he wouldn't get back together with Vivien. And now, he was in bed with her. He had broken his promise. Was he going to bring Vivien back to the home next? Lucy clenched her fists. She never should have helped him get on that plane. It would have been better if Clara or Brooke had caught him. At least with them, she knew he felt nothing. With Vivien, it was complicated. Jason heard the sigh on the other end of the line. He didn't say anything. He simply grabbed Vivien's wandering hand, his grip firm. That's enough. His voice was terrifyingly cold. The way he looked at her held none of its former warmth. He was done with this woman. She was a bottomless pit. The headboard was practically broken. He didn't remember her drinking that much of the soup. The effect shouldn't have been this intense. Didn't she have any self-control? He knew the drug was powerful, but even he had been able to fight it. He knew what Sprite, Lucy, was thinking, that he still had feelings for Vivien. But the truth was, as he was with Vivien, the faces he had seen in his mind were Clara's and Brooke's. This had just been a result of her scheming. And with this final act, she had exhausted every last drop of affection he had left for her. Jason, his voice startled her, and her eyes filled with a wounded expression. He didn't even look at her. You got what you wanted. Are you satisfied now? He got out of bed and headed for the bathroom. He saw the unused condom in his robe pocket and sighed. It couldn't happen again, right? He couldn't possibly be that lucky. If he was really a 100% guaranteed sharpshooter, he should just change careers. You're just scaring yourself, he thought, rubbing his temples as he stepped into the shower. Vivien sat on the bed, watching him go, a desolate look on her face. But a moment later, she picked up her phone and called her assistant. Find me the best restorative tonics you can. The absolute best. Her body was weak from the bone marrow extractions, but since she discovered some of the Sue family secrets, they hadn't dared to take too much. Her health was better now. Better than Clara's, at least. If Clara could get pregnant, why couldn't she? Yes, miss, the assistant replied, then hesitated. Miss, I think you need to be concerned about the family. By now, they'll have heard about Julian Sue's death. Julian was the family's only heir. They would not let his death go unanswered.